Welcome to Dr. Deepak Chopra's Perfect Health series, audio tapes to balance the mind and body and help relieve many common health concerns. In this course on chronic fatigue, you will learn an approach to eliminating fatigue that is fundamentally different from any other. Unlike other programs you may have tried, this course is based on knowledge. Recognizing that the more you know about the correct functioning of your body, the better equipped you will be to live a life full of energy and vitality. In this course, you will learn how to uncover the natural sources of energy within you and how to gain the maximum energy and vitality from the food you eat, your daily activity, and the environment. You will learn simple techniques and procedures that will put you in tune with your body's needs and help you to correct the imbalances that caused the fatigue in the first place. As you regain your energy, you will also find that you grow in self-confidence, enjoy better health, and feel a sense of youthful happiness. So, the goal of this course is not only to eliminate fatigue, but to help you create a more balanced mind and body and lead a happy, fulfilled life. Leading you on this path of self-discovery is Dr. Deepak Chopra. For the past decade, Dr. Chopra has successfully combined his impeccable credentials in Western medicine with his exploration of mind-body medicine. By doing so, he has dramatically influenced many in the traditional medical circles and helped to bring the enormous benefits of holistic medicine to the general public's attention. He has authored several best-selling books, including Quantum Healing, Perfect Health, and Ageless Body, Timeless Mind. His many audio and videotapes have also received popular acclaim. He helped introduce Ayurvedic medicine to the Western world and has established health centers for stress management and behavioral medicine in North America. Today, Dr. Chopra lectures around the world. He is often featured in major magazines and newspapers and is a frequent guest on national television and radio shows. This course on chronic fatigue includes a workbook which complements the practical recommendations which Dr. Chopra discusses on the audio tapes. The workbook will help you gain maximum benefit from the course. We recommend that you listen to the lesson easily. After the lesson, jot down the points which summarize the most important suggestions made by Dr. Chopra on the tapes. Start incorporating these recommendations into your daily routine one at a time, starting with the ones that seem easiest to you. Keep reviewing the recommendations each day until you are gradually able to integrate all of them into your routine in an easy and comfortable way. Now let's join Dr. Chopra with Lesson 1, Energy and the Quantum Mechanical Body, in which you'll learn how to tap into the unbounded dynamism of nature. Dr. Chopra.
Looking around us at nature, we see a world abounding with energy. Everywhere there is dynamic activity. Birds awaken early, sing and busily build their nests. Squirrels scurry for food, rabbits hop and deer bound across the road. Even the grass and flowers seem to spring out of the earth with exuberance and vitality. All around us is a natural world of energy and purposeful activity. This is true not only in the biological world, but in the physical world as well. Waves crash against the shore. Rivers rush down their course with incredible power and speed. The wind howls, pushing everything before it. The earth spins on its axis and the planets revolve around the sun at breakneck speeds. The sun itself is a continuous source of immense energy, the main source of energy for the biological kingdom. In fact, physicists tell us that the universe is, at its basis, one dynamic, pulsating field of energy. Energy is what drives life and gives it zest. The question is, with so much energy abounding in nature, in fact, with energy being the very basis of nature, how could anyone possibly feel fatigued? And yet it is clear that for millions of people, fatigue is a daily experience, for many a dominant experience of their lives. Here we see a great paradox, the discrepancy between the prevalence of chronic fatigue in our society and the availability of abundant energy in the natural world around us. This paradox is distressing, but it also gives us an important clue as to the basic solution to chronic fatigue. We want to go deeply into this. In this course, you will learn many different techniques and strategies for re-establishing the connection between yourself and nature, to uncover the natural sources of energy within you. But before going into the solutions, let's look more closely at the problem of fatigue and get an idea of its scope. The first thing to know about chronic fatigue is that it is extremely common. A recent study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association found that 24% of patients who were randomly surveyed in the waiting room of a general medical clinic, about 1 in 4 patients complained of chronic fatigue. Women reported a higher rate of fatigue than men. 28% of women were fatigued compared to 19% of men. But the incidence of fatigue in men was still quite high, about 1 in 5. Fatigue is known to be one of the most common complaints that people bring to their family doctors. A survey by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services found that fatigue is the 7th most common symptom in general medical practice. There is no doubt that for tens of millions of Americans, fatigue is part and parcel of their daily lives. And yet fatigue is also one of the most elusive complaints to evaluate medically. Only rarely can a doctor pinpoint a definitive medical cause for fatigue. Of course, it is true that anyone with persistent deep fatigue, more than a month or 2 in duration, should have a medical checkup. This is important because one has to determine whether there may be a clear-cut, easily treatable cause of fatigue. The cause could be anemia, a thyroid problem, hepatitis, diabetes, mononucleosis, kidney disorders, or another chronic health disorder. While I do recommend that you have a medical checkup to rule out such physical causes of fatigue, I also want to point out what may be the single most important finding about chronic fatigue from scientific research. Studies have found that in the overwhelming majority of people complaining of chronic fatigue, no specific physical cause can be found. I am going to come back and discuss the significance of this finding in a few moments. How should we define chronic fatigue? First of all, when we say chronic fatigue, we mean fatigue that has been there for a long time, at least 1 month or more. This is different from acute fatigue, fatigue which has been present only a short time. Acute fatigue is often due to immediate life situations, like cramming to study for an exam, pushing yourself to meet a deadline at work, or a stressful situation such as an argument with your boss. This kind of acute fatigue will generally be improved by some extra rest, for example, a few good nights' sleep or a short vacation, and the passage of time. By contrast, people who are chronically fatigued usually report that no matter how much rest they get, they still feel tired. Of course, getting extra rest may help, but it does not ultimately make the problem of fatigue go away. This is the hallmark of chronic fatigue. In fact, it is very common for chronically fatigued people to feel tired even when they wake up in the morning, perhaps even more tired than when they've been up and about for a while. This shows that sleep alone is not sufficient to solve the problem of chronic fatigue. So we can define chronic fatigue as fatigue which has lasted for at least 1 month or more, is present every day or nearly every day, and is not cured by getting rest. It is also true that chronic fatigue severely limits our ability to be productive, creative, successful, and to enjoy life. It is often not well appreciated just how greatly chronic fatigue can interfere with normal life. The study on fatigue mentioned earlier found that the negative impact of chronic fatigue on normal life was comparable to that in patients with very serious medical disorders like untreated thyroid disease or patients surviving a recent heart attack. What is amazing is that this is true even though, as I mentioned, the overwhelming majority of people with chronic fatigue do not have a demonstrable physical cause for their tiredness. On the other hand, it is now clear that most chronic fatigue is influenced by emotional and mental factors. This may be the case even though the fatigued person may not be aware of it. For example, studies on chronic fatigue have found that up to 80% of fatigued people score higher than normal on psychological tests for depression or anxiety. Here we are stepping onto a very crucial area, and one which will be a central theme of this course, the power of the mind over the body, the mind-body connection, which seems to play a dominant role in chronic fatigue. Your mind and emotions can be major energy drainers or energy boosters. We will go into this in great detail during the coming lessons. Before going on to look at the solution to chronic fatigue, I want to mention a subgroup of tired people who have a much more severe version of this problem, which has come to be known as chronic fatigue syndrome. Chronic fatigue syndrome, frequently called CFS in short, refers to a specific disorder which first began to be recognized medically in 1985. This disorder involves a type of fatigue which is so intense, persistent, and profound that it actually is severe enough to reduce normal daily activities by at least 50% for at least 6 months. People with chronic fatigue syndrome often have to sleep 12 hours a day or more, and even then they have difficulty performing everyday tasks of life. Whereas individuals with the usual kind of chronic fatigue will generally manage to push themselves through their daily activities, people with chronic fatigue syndrome are truly disabled by their disorder. This syndrome resembles a disease more than does the usual type of chronic fatigue. CSF also commonly includes other symptoms in addition to fatigue: low-grade fever, recurrent sore throat, sore lymph nodes, muscle aches or weakness, joint pains, headaches, and so forth. The most current theories about the cause of chronic fatigue syndrome are that it is due to a persistent low-grade viral infection or to a disorder of the immune system. If you have symptoms which suggest chronic fatigue syndrome, you should see a doctor for medical evaluation. At this time, there is no definitive conventional medical treatment for this disease. All of the recommendations in this course are, of course, going to be very helpful to patients with chronic fatigue syndrome because, as we shall see, they bear directly on improving immune functioning as well as on energy. Now, having looked at the problem of chronic fatigue, both the common and the severe chronic fatigue syndrome kind, let's take a close look at the solution: energy. As I mentioned before, the universe is a field of dynamic, bubbling energy. Planets are revolving and galaxies hurtling at incredible speeds. Even the atoms, the building blocks of our bodies, contain enormous energy. The atoms are made up of particles that are whirling and spinning and hurtling and rebounding and colliding and disintegrating with phenomenal speeds in a huge void of unbounded, infinite energy. In fact, matter itself is a form of energy. Einstein, in his famous equation, E is equal to mc squared, showed us that every speck of matter in the universe contains an enormous amount of energy. The solution to chronic fatigue, as well as the basis for achieving a more fulfilling, happier, higher level of life, is to be able to tap into the normal, natural field of energy which is in us and surrounds us. Let's take a closer look at how the human system is able to tap into the energy of nature. Modern physicists are telling us that everything in the universe is produced through the fluctuations of one basic unified field of energy, a field of energy and intelligence which is at the very foundation of all nature. In other words, there is a universal field of energy which underlies everything in the universe and through which all phenomena in the universe are expressed. We ourselves, our own individual physiologies, are as if localized concentrations of energy and intelligence in the universal field of energy and intelligence. We are in a state of constant equilibrium with it. The intelligence and energy which flows through our bodies is the same intelligence and energy that governs the entire universe. We are in a continuum with nature. The human body is able to tap into the field of energy in nature because it is basically structured out of that field. The body is energy. This becomes very clear when we look at the atoms which compose the body. We know from quantum physics that atoms themselves are not solid objects. That's just a superstition. They are made up of subatomic particles, protons, neutrons, and electrons, whirling around each other at lightning speeds. The spaces within the atom, between those subatomic particles, are proportionately as great as the spaces found in outer space. The human body is proportionately as void as intergalactic space. What's more, from the quantum physicist's point of view, even the subatomic particles are not solid material objects. They too are really fluctuations of energy that have somehow taken on a concrete material form. We remember what Einstein said, that matter is really nothing but energy cloaked in a different form. The great quantum physicists of the 1920s and 30s discovered that every physical particle is ultimately a form of energy vibration called a wave function. This revelation that matter is actually a form of wave vibration is called in quantum physics wave-particle duality. These profound insights from the most advanced field of modern science, quantum physics, give us a whole new view of our bodies. Underneath the physical material facade, the physical material sheath, the body is really a pulsating, dynamic field of energy. The individual particles which make up the body are modes of energy vibration within the universal field of energy. Underlying the manifest material body, we have what we call a quantum mechanical body. This quantum mechanical body, also called the subtle body by ancient seers, is a body of process, of energy, of intelligence, and it is the body which is closer to the unified source of energy in nature, the body which determines what our physical material body will be like. Understanding this level of the quantum mechanical body will provide us with the real key to understanding the origins of chronic fatigue and also the key to eliminating it. I've mentioned that most of us, with the exception of quantum physicists, tend to think of the body as physical, hard, solid. At the same time, most of us think of the mind as something ethereal, non-material, non-substantial. Therefore, you may have a hard time conceiving of how the mind and the body could possibly relate to or interact with each other. However, this relationship is precisely the focus of a new and exciting field of medicine called mind-body medicine, which is offering solutions to some of the most difficult and frustrating problems in conventional healthcare. You can have a much clearer picture of the mind-body relationship if you think about the quantum mechanical level of the body we were just discussing. Once we see that the supposedly material structure of the body is really nothing other than energy, energy which is vibrating or fluctuating within itself, we will see that thought and matter are not so very dissimilar from each other. From the point of view of quantum physics, there is not much difference between fluctuations of thought arising within the unified field and the wave vibrations which give rise to the material particles which structure the body. Both are fluctuations of the unified field acting within itself. Thought is a quantum event, a very subtle impulse or vibration of the field. But even though it is subtle, it has a very profound influence on the functioning of the body. Recent research at the National Institutes of Health in Washington has begun to reveal the fascinating connection between our thoughts and feelings and the physical body. It has been discovered that a host of physical chemicals are produced by the brain every time we have a thought or a feeling. These chemicals are called neurochemicals or neuropeptides, molecules produced by the nervous system. It's fascinating to know that the type of neuropeptide produced corresponds to the quality of thought or feeling which we have. What is most important for us to understand now is that these neuropeptides are not confined to our brain or nervous system, but circulate throughout the body and profoundly influence every aspect of the physiology's functioning. Receptors to these neuropeptides have been found throughout the digestive system, the heart, the lungs, kidneys, and in the immune system. This means that these neuropeptides have a very powerful effect on all of the physiological processes which are involved in energy production as well as immunity. So through this understanding of the mind-body connection, how thoughts and emotions affect the body, we can understand much more about what causes chronic fatigue. We can make sense out of the research finding that people with chronic fatigue generally do not have specific physical problems, but tend to have higher than normal levels of depression and anxiety. It is first and foremost the quality of your emotional and mental life that robs the body of energy and produces chronic fatigue. This energy drain happens through the mind-body connection governed by the neuropeptides produced in the brain. Of course, when you feel fatigue, you feel it in your body. It's very real. Just because I can't look at it with a microscope and see it under the lens doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. In fact, the mind and the body are so inseparably one that it is really artificial to say something is real because it's physical and something is not real because it's not physical, because the source of the physical is the non-physical. As we see, the underlying unified field of nature is completely unmanifest. It's totally non-physical. It's even beyond the field of energy, space, and time. But it is the source of energy, space, time, and ultimately of matter. So this distinction that this is physical and this is not physical is really, in the ultimate sense, not valid at all. Just knowing that there is an underlying field of infinite energy that drives all of our bodily processes gives us the key to understanding the ultimate solution to chronic fatigue, which is the basis for all of the techniques and strategies which will be outlined in the coming lessons. What is going on in the body at every moment is the infusion of energy into the cells from the underlying universal field of energy. When this universal energy is infused into the body, it becomes energy to drive life. I am going to call this energy, which is available to the body, vital energy or biological energy, frequently referred to as prana in the Ayurvedic texts. How well this infusion happens determines how much vital energy you have. This in turn depends upon many different factors. For example, quality of food, digestion, air, thoughts and emotions, and so on. But the basic principle is that the level of energy we experience in daily life, our level of vital energy, is the direct result of how well we are connected to the underlying unified field of energy. It is this connection of ourselves to the field which allows for the infusion of energy and intelligence into all systems and determines how well all our physiological processes are working. Now, from this quantum mechanical viewpoint, I am going to bring out some basic rules or principles to help you start experiencing pure energy instead of chronic fatigue. Rules which we will use again and again in the following lessons of this course. We are going to call these rules primary energy principles, or PEPs. Each lesson of the course will contain some PEPs, which will be the basic backbone of that lesson. What I would like you to do is take some paper and write down these PEPs, these basic principles, as I dictate them on this tape. Writing these PEPs down on paper will be a valuable part of this course because it will focus your attention on these principles and help you to learn them in a permanent way. In fact, the very first PEP explains why knowing these principles will be a great boon for your health. PEP number 1 reads, "Knowledge has organizing power. Through the mind-body connection, knowledge affects the body and creates health." So that's PEP number 1. Knowledge can act as medicine. In fact, according to mind-body medicine, knowledge is the greatest healer. Each of these PEPs, if you learn them thoroughly, will actually be like a medicinal prescription for your mind-body system. The neurochemicals they structure in your system will help to nourish, heal, and revitalize you in a very real and profound way. I'd like to give you the next few PEPs now. Please write them down. PEP number 2. Chronic fatigue is not natural to life. Energy is natural. Energy is omnipresent and is fully available in the unified field of energy at the basis of nature itself. PEP number 3. Energy naturally flows from the unified field to our mind-body system. Fatigue results from blocks or disruptions in this natural flow of energy from the unified field of energy to the individual mind-body system. PEP number 4. These blocks or imbalances in the mind-body system result from being out of harmony, out of balance with nature. And PEP number 5. The key to eliminating chronic fatigue and having abundant energy is balance. A balanced mind-body system allows energy to flow easily and frictionlessly from nature to the individual. If you look at these first 5 PEPs, you'll see that they contain profound knowledge not only about energy and fatigue, but about the relationship of the individual to the universe and to nature. PEP number 5 contains the keystone principle of the course, the principle of balance. Balance is the goal of all the natural techniques I will be presenting in this course. In terms of this course, I use the word balance in a holistic way, meaning integration on all levels of life. There are 4 basic levels of life we are going to consider in the course, for which you are going to learn techniques and procedures to create balance. The levels of the body, the mind, behavior, and the environment. Now, at the end of this lesson, the first lesson, I'm going to give you the first technique in this course for eliminating fatigue, which is a mind-body technique. This technique is called energy tracking. Very simply, what this means is becoming more aware of the level of energy you are experiencing each day and throughout the day. It goes back to our first primary energy principle: knowledge has organizing power. Increased awareness, more knowledge of what we are experiencing, will actually help to solve the problem. And why are we going to be tracking energy instead of fatigue? The answer to this lies in our 6th PEP, which is called the principle of the second element. Please write it down. PEP number 6, the principle of the second element. This principle states that the ultimate solution to any problem is not on the level of the problem itself. The solution lies in bringing in a second element, which is opposite to the problem. To make this principle clearer, I will give you a traditional Ayurvedic illustration, which I'll update a little in modern terms. In a dark room, people may perceive that the problem of darkness is a drain on them. Because of the darkness, they cannot see clearly what they are doing. They cannot be very effective and enjoy life. They are constantly bumping into things and to each other, causing hurts and pains and all sorts of difficulties. A very intelligent group of people in the room may come together to think about how to solve the problem of darkness. They could form a committee to investigate the possible causes of darkness, even to try to diagnose its various types and forms and shades and come up with different ways to treat the darkness and eliminate it. So much energy can be used in trying to eliminate the problem of darkness at the level of darkness itself. However, in the midst of this analysis, one person may accidentally stumble against the light switch in the room, and suddenly the room is filled with light. In an instant, the darkness is gone. What becomes clear is that the darkness itself was not the problem. The problem was the absence of a second element, in this case, light. In fact, we can see that the darkness actually had no reality in and of itself. It was merely the absence of a positive reality, light. And in fact, in terms of modern physics, this is exactly the case. Light is a physical entity consisting of electromagnetic radiation or streams of particles called photons. Darkness has no real physical structure. It is just the absence of a positive entity, light. In this course, the problem is fatigue. But fatigue is not in and of itself the problem. Fatigue is merely the absence of a positive entity, which is energy. According to the principle of the second element, the best solution to the problem of fatigue is to focus on the second element, energy. Therefore, all of the techniques and principles presented in this course are going to be oriented toward enhancing energy in the mind-body system. Another way of saying this, as we saw in PEP number 5, is promoting balance. So what I want you to do in energy tracking is to use an energy tracking chart to rate the level of energy which you are experiencing at different times of the day. You'll find samples of this chart in your workbook. There are also instructions there for how to use the chart. Basically, what you will be doing is rating the level of energy you are experiencing on a scale from 0 to 10, with 0 being no energy and 10 being the highest level of energy that you have ever experienced. So 0 will be no energy, complete fatigue, and 10 will be all energy and vitality, without any trace of fatigue. 5 will be midway between these. You feel some fatigue and some energy, about equally. You should note on the chart the energy level which you are experiencing at 3 key points during the day. Shortly after you get up, such as just after washing up, again in the late morning, shortly before lunch, and again in the late afternoon, about 4 p.m. To rate your energy, what you should do is simply sit quietly and let your awareness be on your whole body. You can do this with eyes either open or closed, whichever feels more comfortable to you. Then mentally note what your energy level feels like. Then rate this on the chart. In the comments section of the chart, you can note any activities or experiences you have had which you think may have affected your energy levels. By noting your level of energy, you will increase your awareness of what your body is experiencing. And this enhanced mind-body awareness will also have a healing property and help to eliminate the imbalances at the basis of fatigue. It will also provide you with a written record of your progress in this course as you begin to apply the other techniques that you will be learning. You will be able to see from your energy tracking charts how fatigue is progressively eliminated as more and more balance is being restored to the system. So we have seen in this lesson that the key to overcoming fatigue and living life with energy and zest and fulfillment is balance, living in harmony with nature, with natural law. This is the key to the natural infusion of energy, joy, and bliss that we all desire. In order to know the best approaches for creating balance in our own particular mind-body system, we have to know more about our unique individual physiology. In the next lesson, we will examine body types and help you determine your own particular psychophysiological body type.
This is the end of Lesson 1. Please review the recommendations in the workbook before continuing with Lesson 2. Chronic fatigue continues with Lesson 2, Discovering Your Ayurvedic Body Type, in which you'll learn how to get in touch with your inner intelligence. Dr. Chopra.
The energy which drives the universe is also abundantly available inside of us. It resides within every cell and energizes the entire physiological system. Our goal is to re-establish full contact with this latent reservoir of biological energy to make it fully available to us in every second and every moment of every day. The key to re-establishing contact with our inner energy reservoir is to establish balance. In order to know how each of us can achieve balance, we need to first know more about our unique mind-body system. Each one of us has his or her own unique constitution, which expresses itself in a myriad of different qualities, both mental and physical. Remember that we described in Lesson 1 how mind and body are intimately related. They are both expressions of the same underlying reality, quantum fluctuations in the unified field. We can call this total expression of our mental and physical characteristics our body-mind. Knowing the basic elements of your body-mind is the starting point to knowing what you must do in order to achieve balance. This course is based on the most recent scientific advances in mind-body medicine and Ayurveda. Ayurveda is the oldest tradition of knowledge having to do with health. Ayurveda, which literally means the science of life, is the original and the most comprehensive system of mind-body medicine. As such, it provides a great wealth of knowledge and also practical techniques for achieving higher levels of health. The mind-body approaches of Ayurveda are scientifically and clinically verifiable. We have found them to be very helpful in improving and eliminating the problem of chronic fatigue. Now let's begin with what Ayurveda says about the unique mental and physical features which each of us display, and how these individual characteristics affect our health and quality of life. It's very interesting to note that in conventional medicine, we pay much more attention to differences among diseases than among people. But Ayurveda recognizes that the distinctive features of each of us as people are very important in understanding how healthy we are and in understanding what we need to preserve our health. For example, if you have certainly noticed how on a cool autumn day, some people will be dressed in hats, scarves and gloves, anticipating winter, while others are still wearing short-sleeve shirts as if it was summer. Or how some people can eat a huge amount of food, digest it easily, and be hungry again 2 or 3 hours later, while others are able to eat only a much smaller quantity and are not able to digest it and do not become hungry again for many hours. These differences in basic physiological characteristics show us that different people are of different psychophysiological or mind-body types. Obviously, different people display different levels of energy and fatigue. You probably know some people who seem to naturally have unlimited resources of energy. They're able to wake up early, perhaps with relatively little sleep, and be dynamically active all day. Then go out for an evening of entertainment or perhaps even further work and do this day after day without ever seeming to be fatigued. Other people, perhaps you are in this category, feel fatigued just through the course of managing everyday tasks. Or they may even start off the day feeling exhausted and have to be more careful about conserving their energy. The point here is that there are different styles of metabolism, and each of these gives rise to different patterns of energy production. So each of us has our own biochemical and biological individuality, which Ayurveda describes as our constitutional type or mind-body type. There are many different characteristics that go into defining our biological individuality, our shapes, sizes, personality traits, and many different physiological characteristics, our hair color and texture, type of complexion, quality of skin, shapes of eyes, bone structure, hunger patterns, sleep patterns, many other characteristics. Each of us has his or her own particular pattern or fingerprint of mind-body characteristics which define the constitutional type. For the sake of simplicity in this course, we will refer to the individual constitutional type as the body type, even though we know that it really is a mind-body type because it involves mental as well as physical characteristics. The Ayurvedic word for body type is Prakriti. This is a Sanskrit term that literally means nature. The Ayurvedic body type is your individual nature. It is like a blueprint that outlines the innate tendencies that have been built into your system. Learning about your Ayurvedic body type will give you useful information about how to reawaken your body's inner intelligence, to re-establish the connection with your internal reservoir of vital energy. To understand more about the origin of different body types, Ayurveda looks at the junction point between mind and body. This is a fascinating area and one which is very crucial to understanding chronic fatigue. Clearly, the mind and body do meet. Every time there's an event in the mind, there's a corresponding event in the body. We saw in lesson 1 how every thought or emotion in the mind produces corresponding physical chemicals called neuropeptides or neurochemicals. This is a clear illustration of the mind-body connection. At this junction point between mind and body and governing the interactions between the two, Ayurveda locates 3 basic operating principles or agents. Ayurveda calls these 3 governing agents the 3 doshas. We may define the 3 doshas in modern scientific terms. This definition will be the next primary principle of the course, PEP number 7. PEP number 7. The 3 doshas are the 3 basic operating principles, quantum mechanical mind-body operators, which govern the flow of intelligence and energy throughout the system. They are called Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. If you are unsure about the spelling of these new terms, they are printed in your workbook. It will be worthwhile for you to learn the functions of these 3 doshas, which I will describe now. Vata dosha is the governing principle in the body which controls movement. Pitta dosha is the principle which controls metabolism and digestion. Kapha dosha is the principle which controls physical structure and fluid balance. Now, every cell in your body has to contain all 3 of these principles in order to maintain life. Your body must have vata or motion to breathe, circulate the blood, pass food through the digestive tract, send nerve impulses to and from the brain, and so on. It has to have pitta or metabolism to assimilate and process food, air, and water throughout the entire system. It has to have kapha or structure to hold the cells together and to form muscles, fat, bones, and connective tissue. Nature needs all 3 principles to build and sustain your body. But each of us naturally has different amounts of each dosha in our basic constitution. For example, when we say that a certain person is a vata type, we mean that certain characteristics, vata characteristics, are more prominent in that person. Likewise, if we say that a person is a pitta type or a kapha type, it means that that dosha is more predominant in that person by nature. By knowing your body type, you can focus on your diet, your daily routine, and even your behavior in such a way that it is more precisely suited to your physiology, and thereby more suited to maintaining balance and allowing you to gain access to your natural inner energy reserves. There are 10 basic body types made up of different combinations of the 3 basic Vata, Pitta, and Kapha doshas. Of course, every person is a unique individual, so in fact there are really as many body types as there are people. However, there are certain groupings or clusterings of constitutional traits which allow us to describe 10 fundamental constitutional types. The first step to getting back in touch with your inner potential for health is understanding more about the qualities and requirements of your own body type. Let's look first at the 3 simplest body types, which are the Vata, Pitta, and Kapha types. These are people who are very much dominated by the influence of one particular dosha. We'll see a little bit later that most people are dominated by 2 doshas, but for the sake of understanding all the types, it will be good to start with the 3 most simple types, which are called the pure Vata, Pitta, and Kapha types. Let's look first at the characteristics of the Vata type of person. Remember, we said that Vata is the principle which controls movement. Now, there's always a connection between our own individuality and nature. Vata in the individual is likened to the wind or air principle in nature. It is always moving, and like the wind, tends to be quick, cold, dry, rough, and light. People who are Vata types are dominated by these qualities. They tend to be light, airy people. Vata people have a light, thin, asthenic build. They perform activity quickly. They have irregular hunger and digestion. Their sleep is light, often interrupted, and they frequently, if they're under stress, they get insomnia. By nature, if they're in balance, they are enthusiastic, vivacious, imaginative. But they have excitability. Their moods can change quickly. They're quick to grasp new information, but they're also quick to forget. They have a tendency to worry. They're the ones who have also a tendency toward constipation when they're under stress. They tire easily. They tend to overexert very frequently. Their mental and physical energy often comes in bursts. The basic theme of the Vata type is changeable. Vata people are unpredictable and much less stereotyped than either Pittas or Kaphas. But their variability in size, shape, mood, and action is also their trademark. For a Vata person, mental and physical energy comes in bursts without steadiness. It is very Vata, for example, to be hungry at any time of the day or night, to love excitement and constant change, to go to sleep at different times every night, skip meals, or keep irregular habits in general, to digest food well one day and poorly the next, to display bursts of emotion that are short-lived and then quickly forgotten. Now let's look at the second dosha, Pitta. Remember that Pitta governs digestion and metabolism. Pitta governs the transformations, especially the biochemical transformations which happen in the body. It is very much related to the hormone and enzyme systems of the body. Pitta in the body is likened to the fire principle in nature. It burns, transforms, digests. The characteristics of Pitta are that it is hot, sharp, acidic, and slightly oily in property. Pitta is very much related in quality to stomach, acid, or digestive enzymes. Pitta types of people are dominated by these hot, sharp, digestive qualities. Pitta people are usually of medium build. They have medium strength and endurance. Their hunger is sharp, as is their thirst, and they have strong digestion. Under stress, they have a tendency toward anger, irritability. Their skins are fairly ruddy and fair and often freckled. They are sensitive and have an aversion to sun or hot weather. They are usually very enterprising characters. They love challenges. Their intellect is sharp. Their speech is articulate and precise. They cannot skip meals. Their hair is usually light brown or reddish or blonde. The theme of the Pitta type is intense. Anyone with bright red hair and a florid face contains a good deal of Pitta, as does anyone who is ambitious, sharp-witted, outspoken, bold, argumentative, or even jealous. The combative side of Pitta is a natural tendency, but it does not have to be expressed. When in balance, Pittas are warm and ardent in their emotions. They are loving and content. A face glowing with happiness is also very Pitta. It's also very Pitta to feel ravenously hungry if dinner is half an hour late, to live by your watch, generally an expensive one, and resent having your time wasted, to wake up at night feeling hot and thirsty, to take command of a situation or feel that you should, to learn from experience that others find you too demanding, sometimes too sarcastic or even critical, to have a determined stride when you walk. Now let's look at Kapha. Remember that Kapha governs structure. In Ayurveda, it is said to be related to the earth and water principles in nature. The characteristics of Kapha dosha are that it is heavy, stable, steady, cold, oily, slow, dull, and soft. Kapha types of people are dominated by these earthy qualities. Kapha types are solid. They have powerful builds. They have great physical strength and endurance. They have steady energy. They are slow and graceful in action. They are usually tranquil. They have relaxed personalities. They don't get upset or angry easily. Their skin is cool, smooth, thick, pale, often quite oily. They are slow to grasp new information, but they have an excellent and good retentive memory. They have heavy, prolonged sleep. They have a tendency to obesity. Their digestion is slow. Their hunger is mild. They are affectionate and tolerant and forgiving, but when under stress, they can have a tendency to become possessive and too complacent. The basic theme of the Kapha type is relaxed. Kapha dosha, the structural principle in the body, brings stability and steadiness. It provides reserves of physical strength and stamina that have been built into the sturdy, heavy frames of typical Kapha people. Kaphas are considered fortunate in Ayurveda because, as a rule, they enjoy sound health. Moreover, their personalities express a serene, happy, tranquil view of the world. It is very Kapha to mull things over for a long time before making a decision, to wake up slowly, lie in bed for a long time and need coffee once you are up, to be happy with the status quo and preserve it by conciliating others, to respect other people's feelings with which you feel genuine empathy, to seek emotional comfort from eating, to have graceful movements, liquid eyes, and a gliding walk, even if overweight. So this gives you a good overview of the three fundamental body types, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Now these simple or monodoshic means dominated by one particular dosha, body types actually account for only a minority of the population. The overwhelming majority of people are bidoshic in their constitution, meaning that their constitution is structured or dominated by two doshas. For example, Vata Pitta type, Pitta Vata type, Pitta Kapha type, Kapha Pitta type, Vata Kapha type, Kapha Vata type. A person who is a bidoshic type displays qualities of two different doshas. And there is also a tridoshic type, the Vata Pitta Kapha body type. This is the rarest body type. Now it will be good for you to begin to gain knowledge of your own particular body type. In your workbook is a body type test. I'd like you to pause at this point in the tape and take the body type test, and then score it. Instructions for scoring it are also contained in your workbook. Now that you have scored the body type test, you have an idea of which constitutional type you are and which doshas are most predominant in your makeup. Take a moment now to review the qualities of the three doshas and the characteristics of the basic body types. This will help you to get more and more familiar with these doshas, the basic governing principles which control your physiology. Becoming more familiar with this knowledge will help you to be more in touch with your individual physiology, with your quantum mechanical body. This will help you very much in making maximum use of the practical techniques and strategies for achieving mind-body balance, which follow in the subsequent lessons of the course. Now we come to a very key point. According to the Ayurvedic mind-body system, optimal physical and mental health comes from balance, and balance of the system equates with balance of the three doshas. Because the three doshas are the basic governing principles, when they are balanced, the whole mind-body system functions normally. Therefore, the goal of our mind-body approach to eliminating fatigue and enjoying maximum energy and vitality is to establish balance in the three doshas. This will produce perfect coordination in mind and body, and thus integration of physiological functioning. This is the goal we are aiming for. Balance of the doshas will naturally produce ideal energy, vitality, and health. This is a very important point. We'll make it our next primary energy principle. PEP number 8. Balance of the doshas means balance of the entire mind-body system. When the doshas are balanced, all the body's systems work together to create an ideal level of energy, vitality, and health. One thing that is important to know at this point is that what we mean by balance may be different for different individuals. It is probably becoming clear to you at this point that a Vata type of person has very different characteristics from a Kapha type of person. These two types also require very different things in order to remain balanced. For example, a Vata type is light and airy. These people are predominated by qualities of lightness. In order to remain balanced, they need influences that tend to create more heaviness and stability in the mind-body system. We could say that they need more earthy influences. On the other hand, the Kapha type is predominated by earthy qualities, such as heaviness, slowness, and so forth. In order to remain balanced, these people need to lighten up and need to seek out influences which create a lighter, more airy effect on the mind-body system. So you can see how gaining knowledge about your individual constitution is the starting point. It points you in the direction of the influences you need to re-establish and maintain balance. This will help you to make better choices in all areas of your daily life, your diet, behavior, routine, even your type of work and relationships. We will be going through material related to all of these areas in the next few lessons. You can see now how different body types give rise to different tendencies or predispositions towards fatigue. In general, we can say that the Vata type would be the type most prone toward chronic fatigue. For these people, energy tends to come in bursts. They may be so dominated by the principle of movement, which can feel quite exhilarating, that they tend to overexert beyond their natural level of stamina, which is the least of the three body types. So these people tend to become fatigued easily and may alternate between cycles of energetic activity and exhaustion. While they are enthusiastic and vivacious by nature, pure Vata types may be more vulnerable to irregularities of lifestyle, stress, and to more extreme demands on their energy. Vata types are apt to feel frazzled by hectic schedules or a hectic lifestyle. Even though they may seem to thrive on such overactivity for a time, remember that their energy comes in bursts. In the long run, a constant diet of such hyperstimulation will leave them chronically drained and exhausted. Of the three basic body types, Vata types must be most careful to husband their energy resources and use them in a balanced way. Now, supposing you are chronically fatigued, but you scored much higher in Pitta or Kapha on the body type test. Perhaps you even had very little Vata. Is it possible for people who are predominantly Pitta or Kapha to become chronically tired? The answer is definitely yes, but there is usually a much more specific reason for the fatigue in these cases. In the case of Pitta-predominated types, fatigue may be caused by situations which overheat or inflame their Pitta natures. Among these would be chronic exposure to overheating, excessive sunlight, hot or acidic foods. We will discuss the role of diet in the next lesson. Or hot emotions such as anger, envy, jealousy, irritability. One of the most common causes of fatigue in Pitta types is workaholism, the tendency to overdo and overexert over a long term. Pittas by nature have a lot of drive and ambition, and it is not unusual for them to structure aggressive lifestyles which demand a lot of work and energy output. These self-imposed demands may outstrip even a Pitta's usually abundant energy resources, leading to burnout and chronic fatigue. This burnout syndrome may be serious depending on how long this pattern has been going on. If the pattern hasn't been going on too long, however, Pittas can usually rebound quickly from burnout due to their natural strong digestion and metabolism. Abuse of alcohol, which is Pitta inflaming, is another influence which throws Pittas out of balance and may create a constant energy drain and fatigue. As far as Kaphas go, their natural internal reserves of stamina would seem to protect them from chronic fatigue. However, Kaphas also tend to accumulate heaviness. When they go out of balance, they tend to easily gain weight or become congested with fluid or mucus. This excessive accumulation of Kapha can produce not only heaviness, but dullness and lethargy. Remember, one of the basic qualities of Kapha is dullness and slowness. So Kapha types are vulnerable to a type of inertia or lethargy, which may have all the characteristics of fatigue, but which needs to be dealt with quite differently from the Vata type of fatigue. Whereas Vatas need influences that create stability, serenity, and regularity, fatigued Kapha types need to get up and at it. They need influences that will create more activity. They often also need to purify their physiology, a subject we'll discuss in the next lesson. The proper approach to Kapha-type fatigue, therefore, may be quite different from that with Vata-type fatigue. Another very interesting feature to consider is that the quality of fatigue which one experiences will be determined by which dosha is producing the fatigue. That means by which dosha has gone out of balance. The doshas not only structure a person's body type, but when out of balance, they will disrupt normal functioning. The type of disruption, in this case the type of fatigue, will be determined by which dosha has gone out of balance. When a dosha goes out of balance, it means that it goes out of harmony, out of synchrony with the proper proportion of doshas contained in the person's body type, in their nature or prakriti. Usually what this means is that a dosha becomes so overly active or changed in quality that it starts to dominate and eclipse the other doshas. Imbalance in the doshas is called vikriti to distinguish it from prakriti or the natural state of balance. Imbalance or vikriti can happen in one or more than one dosha at a time. Let's look now at how imbalance in each of the three doshas can produce fatigue, and how the qualities of fatigue will differ depending on the dosha which is causing it. Fatigue caused by Vata imbalance is the most common type of fatigue. It has an on-again, off-again quality. Or if fatigue is always present, it may vary considerably in intensity at various times. Vata-type fatigue is also often very responsive to changes in the environment. For example, a stressful situation, bad news, and so forth will worsen the fatigue considerably. On the other hand, some good news, some happy times spent with the family, etc., may cause a immediate and noticeable improvement in the fatigue. Also, Vata-type fatigue though it may feel profound, actually is light enough. Remember that Vata is light in character, that the person can muddle through most daily activities, even though feeling tired. Though Vata-type fatigue may make life seem miserable, it usually does not by itself interfere with essential life activities. Finally, Vata-type fatigue is often accompanied by other Vata symptoms such as anxiety, insomnia, and low-grade depression. Pitta-type fatigue, as mentioned earlier, is usually associated with overwork, overheating, or eating the wrong foods. Pitta-type fatigue may be accompanied by excessive perspiration, uncomfortable sensations of heat, acid indigestion, and other Pitta symptoms. The most common such symptom accompanying Pitta-type fatigue is irritability, grouchiness, anger, impatience. Finally, Kapha-type fatigue has a characteristic heavy feeling to it. This fatigue feels physically heavier than the other two types. The feeling of heaviness in the body can be so profound that it is actually difficult to move around. The sense of deep inertia. Kapha-type fatigue is often associated with the accumulation of impurities or toxins in the system, which literally dampen the body's energy-producing mechanisms. We will consider this more closely in the next lesson when we discuss strategies for elimination of such impurities. Kapha-type fatigue may also be associated with depression, a depression which is much heavier and organic in its quality than the typical Vata-type depression, which tends to be low-grade. Now, at the end of this lesson, I want you to continue the energy tracking exercise as we described in Lesson 1. I'm going to give you another primary energy principle, which helps explain this exercise. Please write it down. PEP number 9. What we put our attention on grows stronger in our lives. You'll remember from the first lesson that I said that knowledge is very powerful. The same is true of attention, the way we project our awareness or consciousness. What we put our attention on tends to increase. Putting our attention on energy is going to help the value of energy to increase in our lives. Also, awareness has a nourishing quality. Awareness itself can be a second element, a healing element. This is exactly the way nature works in the mind-body system. If there is some imbalance there, nature will send us a signal in the form of discomfort or pain. Discomfort is the sign from nature that some imbalance is present in that part of the body. The discomfort or pain will naturally draw our awareness to that part of the body, and this in and of itself will help promote healing in that area. When you do the energy tracking exercise, remember one thing. No matter how deep the fatigue you may be feeling, there will always be some value of energy in the system. The very fact that you are alive and listening to this course shows that there is vital energy present in every part of your mind-body system. By getting more in touch with that vital energy, this will help to enhance its value and allow it to dominate more and more. This is one main value of the energy tracking exercise. This exercise is going to help you get more in touch with your mind-body system, especially those values which are promoting energy and balance. Please continue to do it 3 times a day as we move on to the specific techniques for creating balance in the following lessons of the course. So what we want to do now is to take this knowledge of balance and body types and use it to create more optimum functioning in each of the 4 basic areas of health: body, mind, behavior, and environment. In the next lesson, we will start to learn how to promote ideal balance in the body, especially through digestion and diet.
This is the end of Lesson 2. Please review all the recommendations made so far before continuing with Lesson 3. Chronic fatigue continues with Lesson 5, Unlocking Your Mind's Energizing Potential, in which you will learn the key to enlivening your mind-body connection and how to reduce stress. Dr. Chopra.
So now we want to look at the role of the mind, how the mind can play a powerful role in creating chronic fatigue, and conversely, the ability of the mind to create energy and eliminate fatigue. Even though we are looking at the mind second, after we've considered the body, it may be that the mind is an even more important factor in creating fatigue than is the body. Studies on chronic fatigue, which have been published in medical journals, suggest that this is true. In the first lesson, I mentioned a recent study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, which looked at over 1,000 people suffering from chronic fatigue. In only a very small minority of these people was any physical abnormality found that suggested a physical cause for fatigue. This included physical examination and laboratory tests, including blood tests. On the other hand, 80% of people with chronic fatigue scored abnormally on tests of anxiety and/or depression. This and other studies suggest that chronic fatigue may have much more to do with the mind and the emotions than it does with the body. How can we understand this? The answer again lies in the mind-body connection. This connection is so obvious that it is amazing the extent to which modern medicine tends to overlook it. However, the latest scientific research findings are explaining the ways in which the mind exercises a tremendous influence on the body. You'll remember in the first lesson when I discussed the neurochemicals or neuropeptides whose profound role in the physiology is now being better understood. These tiny chemicals, produced every time we have a thought or an emotion, circulate throughout the body and bind to every organ system. It is especially known that they bind to the immune system cells and the digestive system. These chemicals have a very powerful effect on immune system functioning. They can either increase and enhance immune function or they can depress it. And they also have a profound effect upon the functions of digestion and elimination. Once we appreciate this physiological picture of the mind-body connection, we will see how the mind can be a major energizer or de-energizer of the body. Fluctuations or changes in the mind, whether they be in thoughts or feelings or moods, can cause chemical changes in the brain which release powerful neurochemicals into the circulation to affect the whole physiology. These neurochemicals are like powerful drugs. Just to give an example of one of these, many of you have perhaps heard about endorphins, which were discovered about 2 decades ago. Endorphins are natural painkillers produced by the brain. In fact, the word endorphin literally means internally produced morphine. Comparing endorphins to morphine is by no means an exaggeration. You know that morphine is probably the most powerful narcotic pain-killing drug used in medicine. It is a narcotic opiate closely related to heroin. What has been found in the case of endorphins, however, is that they are 50 to 100 times more powerful than morphine. It is amazing to think that the body can produce such a potent painkiller, and yet it does so all the time, in very small amounts, or in acute pain in large amounts. This gives us a clue to a very important reality. The brain is the most powerful pharmacy that we can have access to. Endorphins are probably one of literally thousands of naturally occurring biochemicals which the brain produces in order to create health and healing. The great advantage of these natural, internally produced chemicals over drugs that you buy in a pharmacy is that our own neurochemicals are produced in just the right amount at just the right times in response to the body's perception of pain or some other biological need. And there are no side effects to these natural biochemicals since they are part and parcel of the body's natural healing system. Just as it contains potent painkillers, the brain's natural pharmacy contains compounds to re-establish balance in all the body's major systems, including its energy systems. The key to perfect health is in learning how to use the brain's pharmacy properly. Once we gain more mastery in this area, we ourselves will be able to produce powerful, energizing compounds which will enhance our body's energy-producing systems much more effectively than any pep pill we could take from the outside, and also completely naturally without side effects. It will also mean learning how to turn off production of neurochemicals that actually dampen the body's energy-producing and healing systems. The key to the brain's neurochemical pharmacy is in the mind. Balance of mind will produce balance of the brain's chemistry, which will in turn produce optimum functioning of the body's energy systems. How to create balance of mind? The first step, and probably most important, is to reduce and eliminate stress. Stress is a term we're all familiar with. It conjures up all sorts of images and experiences we have every day. Being caught on the expressway at rush hour, having to meet time deadlines, harsh words, disappointments, and so forth. We all associate these with stress. How can we define stress? Ayurveda defines stress as the undue pressure of experience. This means that our system is subjected to some experience it is not prepared to handle in a balanced and integrated way. The pressure of this experience creates an overpowering or overwhelming influence on the system. Usually, this comes from an experience that is too intense for the system to handle easily. Or it may be from an experience that is simply inappropriate to a particular situation. We generally think of stress as being caused by negative situations. But even a good experience, if it involves undue pressure on the system, can cause stress. For example, suddenly being informed that you won $20 million in the lottery. Certainly the heart will start to race, the blood pressure will shoot up, you will break out into perspiration, and so forth. All of these are signs of a stress reaction. Looking closely at this stress reaction, we see another example of the mind-body connection. Some event comes along which is purely psychological, and yet it produces an immediate effect on the body. Medical scientists call this stress reaction the fight or flight response, a term which is probably familiar to you. Fight or flight refers to the choice a person may have to make when presented with the possibility of extreme physical danger. For example, being physically attacked. The choice is either to stand and fight or else to turn and quickly flee. What happens in such a situation is that the psychological experience of fear or anxiety gets translated into neurochemicals and other hormonal changes, which circulate throughout the body and affect many different systems. Heart rate speeds up, blood pressure goes up, blood flow is shunted to the muscles, so they may take quick action if necessary. Blood flow is shunted away from the stomach and intestines, digestion shuts down, and there may be a feeling of cramps or nausea. Perspiration breaks out, cold sweat, and even the hair can stand on end. The main point about the fight or flight response is that it obviously interferes with normal functioning of the system. We can especially see how it affects the heart and circulatory system, as well as the digestive and elimination systems. Even one experience of a full-blown fight or flight response is a huge energy drain on the body. Many experts have pointed out that small versions of the fight or flight response are elicited every day during the course of modern life. When everyday life starts to feel like a constant battle, one can be sure that miniature versions of the fight or flight response are continually being elicited in the body. If one's life experience is of deadlines and aggressive interactions during the day, or recurring battles on the home front, you can be sure that the stress reaction is becoming a continuous feature of physiological functioning. At this point, it should be clear that what stress does is changes the body's ability to function normally. Of course, the body has a tremendous ability for self-repair and healing. Given a chance, the effects of stress on the body can be repaired and reversed. I'll discuss in a few moments some of the best ways to give the mind-body system such a chance. However, lacking such opportunities, And if the exposure to stress is a continual feature of daily life, obviously this has a very draining and depleting effect on the system. The body is constantly having to mobilize energy to deal with perceived stress. The result is inevitably chronic fatigue. Chronic stress not only drains the system of energy directly, it also acts to interfere with the body's energy-producing systems, especially digestion and elimination. How often have you heard expressions like the following in relation to a stressful experience? I felt like my stomach was tied up in knots. I felt it in my gut. I had a lump in my throat. I completely lost my appetite. It makes me feel sick to my stomach. These common expressions of the experience of stress tell us that the digestive system, the stomach and intestines, is one of the major areas to bear the brunt of the stress response. So when stress becomes a way of life, it's obvious that digestion will be one of the major areas to be affected. Digestive efficiency is weakened, and therefore so is the body's main energy-producing system. There is another master system of the body which is directly affected by stress, and that is the immune system. It is now known that many of the neurochemicals which the brain produces interact directly with the cells of the immune system and affect their function. For this reason, these neurochemicals are called immunomodulators. They change the way the immune system functions. The neurochemicals which are produced as part of the stress response are immunodepressors. They depress the functioning of the immune system. Studies have shown that people under chronic stress have weaker immunity than people who are not. The effect of the mind-body connection on immunity is important for anyone who may be suffering from long-term problems with immunity, especially people with chronic fatigue syndrome, the syndrome I described in the first lesson. Another group of people in this category are those who have been diagnosed as having chronic yeast infection. There is a current theory in some health circles that certain people with chronic fatigue may be suffering from a long-term infection with yeast fungus. I personally feel that the evidence supporting this theory is not very strong and doubt that it is a significant cause of chronic fatigue. However, even if this theory is true for some people, the key to overcoming such chronic infection is strengthening the immune system. So the mind-body approaches contained in this course will be appropriate and helpful to these cases also. Now let's summarize this material on stress and fatigue in a primary energy principle. Please write this down. PEP number 15. The stress response is a major factor in producing chronic fatigue. It does so in two ways: by directly draining energy from the body and by interfering with the body's energy-producing systems, especially digestion. Before going on to the techniques for reducing stress, I want to just mention another source of chronic stress in modern life, which is much more subtle, but probably very common. This common cause of stress we call lack of fulfillment. If we took all of the obstacles and impediments out of our lives, it doesn't automatically mean that we would be without stress. Human life needs a higher dimension, a sense of inner purpose and meaningfulness in order to be without stress. A lack of inner direction, inner contentment or meaningfulness may be very subtle, especially if one fills up one's time with a whirlwind of activities. Yet such a whirlwind may only be masking a deeper problem of lack of inner fulfillment. This can be a major source of energy drain and chronic fatigue for many people. I will go into this fascinating area more deeply in the last lesson of this course. In this present lesson, we will explore the area of everyday stress, how to deal with it, and overcome its effects. The best way to reduce and eliminate stress is to provide the system with the experience which is the opposite of stress, the experience of deep relaxation and rest. For this, Ayurveda provides specific techniques of stress reduction, mental techniques which directly eliminate stress by providing the opposite experience. The first and foremost of these techniques is meditation. The specific meditation technique which I personally use and recommend is the Transcendental Meditation technique. The effects of transcendental meditation have been documented in over 400 scientific research studies. It is by far the most thoroughly documented technique of stress reduction and mental development. In addition to meditation, there are several other stress reduction techniques, which I will recommend to you now, that can be big energizers for the mind-body system. Neuromuscular integration consists of a set of yoga stretching exercises which enliven the integration between the mind, the nervous system, and the body. These are not exercises in the usual sense that we use the word exercise. We'll consider exercise as such in the next lesson. Neuromuscular integration is a much more subtle practice which is quite effortless and which works by enlivening certain vital points in the body, which Ayurveda calls marma points. These vital points are like control switches which shunt energy and biological intelligence to various parts of the body. When all of the marma points in the body are enlivened in an integrated fashion, this creates a uniform and balanced flow of energy throughout the system. It creates integration of the whole physiological system. Regular practice of these techniques greatly improves energy and vitality, as well as general health. The neuromuscular integration program recommended in this course is outlined in detail in your workbook. The program consists of a sequence of yoga stretching postures, each of which stretches a different part of the body. The marma points in the part of the body being stretched are thereby enlivened, and energy shunted to the organs which are governed by those marma points. The key to successful performance of the neuromuscular integration program is that it is a mind-body program. The mind plays an important role as well as the body. The most important instruction is to hold the posture for the recommended time indicated, and while you're holding it, to allow your attention, your awareness, to easily be on the part of the body that is being stretched. This will be a natural thing that tends to happen spontaneously anyway. As you hold the posture, your mind will naturally feel the part of the body which is being stretched. You don't have to concentrate or focus to do this. Just let the flow of awareness naturally go to the area that is being stretched. Allow your awareness to flow to this area, and along with the physical stretch, you will wake up the marma point in this area. The principle here is that awareness, attention, has organizing power. This means that awareness has healing power. It helps to wake up the body's natural self-repair, self-correcting mechanisms. You'll remember we presented this very important principle in the first lesson of the course. One other important point about the neuromuscular integration program: you should never allow yourself to feel any strain or pain during its practice. If you feel that any of the postures depicted in the workbook would be difficult or painful for you to perform, you should avoid those postures completely, or perform them in a limited way, stretching only to the point where you feel comfortable, but not to the point where you feel strain or pain. If you have any question about your ability to perform any or all of the postures without discomfort, it would be best to consult your physician before proceeding with this program. If you are in the older age groups or have any acute or chronic muscle, joint, or skeletal problems, for example, chronic neck or back pain, it would be best to consult your doctor before proceeding. The whole neuromuscular integration program takes about 10 minutes to perform. You can do it once or twice a day. Many people have reported that these exercises are a major energy booster for them and improve their whole sense of well-being. Another program you will find very useful is neuro-respiratory integration. You remember in lesson 3 when we considered how the body produces energy, the major emphasis was on digestion and metabolism. But you'll remember that respiration is also very much involved. This is because energy is produced through the combination of oxygen with food. So the quality of respiration, our breathing, is very much involved with how energetic we feel. In fact, one word for vital energy in Ayurveda is prana. Prana literally means vital breath. Ayurveda recognizes that breathing is a major energizer of the body. If breathing is balanced and relaxed, it promotes vitalizing energy throughout the system. If, on the other hand, breathing is shallow or imbalanced, the body does not get the full complement of vital energy that it needs. In Ayurveda, there is a whole science devoted to creating balance and optimum functioning of breathing. This area is called pranayam, which literally means regulating the vital breath. The neuro-respiratory integration exercises, called pranayam techniques in Ayurveda, help develop balanced respiration and good breathing habits. In your workbook, you'll find a basic balanced breathing technique from the neuro-respiratory integration program. This technique is easy to perform, takes only about 5 minutes, and it can be a major revitalizer. It is performed sitting comfortably in a chair or on the bed or the floor, usually with the eyes closed. The technique involves alternating your breathing between each nostril, the right and the left. Please read the instructions carefully. During the practice of this technique, you should breathe a little more deeply and a little more slowly than you do during normal, restful breathing. Some people may find it a bit confusing at first. If you do, simply stop the practice for a few moments, allow the breathing to occur normally again, and then easily resume the practice. You might be interested to know that the theory behind this balanced breathing technique holds that the airflow through the right and left nostrils stimulates different areas of the brain, and by alternating this airflow, neurophysiological integration is produced. We now know from modern neurophysiology that the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere of the brain have very different functions. The left hemisphere relates more to logical, linear kinds of reasoning, for example, verbal and mathematical skills, whereas the right hemisphere relates to global, holistic functions, such as spatial orientation, artistic and musical sense, and so forth. Stimulation of the inner lining of the nose and the nostrils through alternate airflow sends sequential impulses to the two different hemispheres of the brain. This helps to integrate their different functions and produce neurophysiological balance. The effect is to wake up the whole system, creating greater mental energy and clarity. There is a recommended sequence to performing these techniques I've discussed. The neuromuscular integration techniques should be performed first, followed by the neuro-respiratory technique, followed by meditation. In this way, we go from a grosser level, the body, to a subtler level, the breathing, and then to the subtlest level, the mind. This creates a very holistic progression, which balances the entire system. Of course, if you don't have time to do all three in succession like this, you may do any one of them in isolation. Again, meditation would be most valuable. The last stress reduction technique I'm going to bring out in this lesson is the Ayurvedic oil massage. This is a traditional part of the Ayurvedic daily routine, which is done at the beginning of each day, prior to the morning shower or bath, as a way of purifying and balancing the whole physiology. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes to perform. If you don't have that amount of time, you can even do it 2 or 3 minutes. The most potent effect of the Ayurvedic oil massage is to balance Vata dosha throughout the system. You will remember that Vata is light, cold and dry, so you will see how the oil massage using warm oil will have a very soothing and pacifying effect on Vata. Vata dosha is the main dosha which goes out of balance from stress, and Vata imbalance is the most common producer of chronic fatigue. Therefore, beginning each day with the Ayurvedic oil massage can have a big influence on balancing Vata and eliminating fatigue. In addition, this technique has a purifying effect on the body. It increases circulation throughout the system and mobilizes and helps remove impurities from the whole body. Instructions for the Ayurvedic oil massage are found in your workbook. The oil which is recommended for most people is sesame oil, which is considered to have a uniquely balancing and vitalizing effect in Ayurveda. The oil is ideally heated briefly before it is used, then allowed to cool to skin temperature. This brief heating of the oil energizes it further and helps to thin it out, increasing its penetrability into the body. Absorption of some of the oil by the skin is particularly valuable to balance Vata dosha. I recommend that you try the Ayurvedic oil massage and see how you feel. Although it is recommended daily, I know that many of you may find this difficult, especially since it involves a new procedure with extra materials. So I recommend you start by doing this 1 or 2 mornings a week. I predict that you will feel so much better on the days when you've done the oil massage that you will naturally start to do it more and more often until you spontaneously find yourself doing it every day. So now, to summarize the information in the second part of this lesson, please write down the following primary energy principle. PEP number 16. The antidote to stress is to bring in the second element, relaxation and rest. I'd like to now summarize the main recommendations from this lesson. 1. Pursue instruction in meditation. 2. Begin to practice the other stress reduction techniques described in this lesson, the neuromuscular integration program, neuro-respiratory integration technique, and Ayurvedic oil massage. Begin with any one of these techniques and incorporate it into your daily routine. Gradually integrate the other techniques into your routine comfortably over time. So now that we have considered this very important area of energy and the mind, we want to turn to the area of behavior, how our activity can help to either enliven or drain our energy resources. We'll find that activity which is in tune with nature's rhythms is energizing activity. In the next lesson, we'll discuss this very important area of biological rhythms.
This is the end of Lesson 5. Please review all of the recommendations so far before continuing with Lesson 6. Chronic fatigue continues with Lesson 6, Balancing Your Behavioral Patterns, in which you'll learn how to get in tune with nature's rhythms. Dr. Chopra.
There's an ancient saying in Ayurveda, timing is everything. This piece of wisdom gives us a very important insight into the way nature functions, and especially the way our bodies function. As I pointed out in the first lesson, we are not divorced from nature. We as individuals are very much part of the continuum of nature. Nature's energy and intelligence flows through us. If we are skillful partners with nature, we will make maximum use of that infinite reservoir of energy and intelligence which we are a part of. Nowhere is this relationship between the individual and nature more apparent than in the fascinating area of biological rhythms. Ayurveda recognized thousands of years ago that nature operates in cycles, and that these cycles have a profound effect upon our individual physiologies. In more recent times, modern physiology has identified major biological rhythms which our systems are subject to. We have within us many different biological clocks, each of which regulates different bodily functions according to precise time cycles. Let's look more closely at what modern physiology has discovered about our biological clocks and rhythms. The most important internal rhythm, which modern science has discovered, is called the circadian rhythm. This is a 24-hour daily rhythm. Many of our bodily functions follow a 24-hour cycle, including levels of many hormones and other biochemicals, the cycle of body temperature, nervous system functions such as waking and sleeping, and so forth. There are also seasonal rhythms and monthly biological rhythms such as the female menstrual cycle. And there are actually biological rhythms which are timed according to the ebb and flow of the ocean tides. So we see that the cycles of nature around us, whether it be the 24-hour cycle of the earth spinning on its own axis, the 365-day cycle of the earth moving around the sun, and so forth, are related in some way to the internal biological rhythms that occur within each of us. This is because the laws of nature which govern the rhythms of the cosmos and the laws of nature which govern our internal biological rhythms are intimately connected. They are expressions of the same basic unified field of intelligence. Now let's come back to our main theme of this lesson. Timing is everything. It turns out that because of biological rhythms, there are certain times when it is appropriate to perform certain activities, and other times when it is inappropriate to perform these activities. By appropriate or inappropriate, I mean biologically helpful or healthy versus biologically unhelpful or unhealthy. A certain activity performed at a particular time may help to enhance energy and physiological balance, whereas the same activity performed at a different time may actually weaken the physiology. We'll express this important point in our next primary energy principle. Please write this down. PEP number 17. From the perspective of biological rhythms, timing is everything. An activity performed at a certain time may promote balance and energy. Performed at a different time, that same activity may create imbalance and fatigue. The recognition of the importance of biological rhythms has given rise to a whole new specialty in medical research called chronobiology. Experiments in this field have confirmed the importance of timing. You can think of our biological rhythms as something like waves of nature, which are constantly passing through us. This will give you a good image of how timing of activity can affect our energy levels. If we time a particular activity such that it is appropriate to the biological activity going on within us at that time, we become like a surfer who has caught the wave. We ride the crest of the wave with balance and precision, and this gives us exhilarating energy and joy. If, however, we attempt to do some activity at a time which is biologically inappropriate, that means the cycles of hormones, nervous system changes, and so forth going on within us do not support such activity at that time. It's like trying to stand up on our surfboard at the wrong time, hitting the wrong part of the wave. Inevitably, what will happen is what surfers call getting wiped out. And literally, in terms of our energy, that's how we'll feel. To live in harmony with nature's rhythms, with our internal biological cycles, is to gain exhilarating energy from nature. To live out of synchrony with these rhythms is to be constantly acting in opposition to nature. Obviously, nature is all-powerful. Acting in opposition to her is not going to do your health any good. It just creates friction and wear and tear, which breaks down bodily systems over time. One inevitable result is chronic fatigue. So let's look more deeply into this very important area. The most important biological rhythm I'm going to focus on in this lesson is the daily or circadian rhythm. Recognizing the importance of this rhythm, Ayurveda thousands of years ago structured the science of daily routine, which emphasizes the importance of timing our daily activities so that they are in synchrony with nature's cycles. The daily routine recognizes that each day we pass through different phases of a 24-hour cycle. Ayurveda describes these phases in terms of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. The influence of the three doshas alternates throughout the day with a certain repeatable pattern. This has an effect on our physiologies, which makes certain activities more appropriate to certain particular times of the day. Let's look closely at the daily cycle of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, beginning at sunrise when the day starts. From 6 a.m. until about 10 a.m., mid-morning, the influence of Kapha is more predominant in the environment. Then from 10 a.m. mid-morning to about 2 p.m. mid-afternoon, the influence of Pitta is predominant. The peak influence of Pitta is at noontime. You'll remember this fact from our discussion of the digestive fire being at its peak at this time. From 2 p.m. mid-afternoon to sunset, approximately 6 p.m., the influence of Vata is most predominant. Then at sunset, or about 6 p.m., a second cycle of the doshas begins, similar to the first. From 6 p.m. to about 10 p.m. is the Kapha period of the evening, when the influence of Kapha predominates. From 10 p.m. through 2 a.m. is the Pitta period of the evening, with its peak point at midnight. And from about 2 a.m. to sunrise, about 6 a.m., Vata predominates. So we see that the 24-hour day is divided into two halves. daytime and nighttime, each of which contains 3 phases of the doshas. Within each cycle, Kapha appears first, then Pitta, and then Vata is the last. We can see the obvious influence of these periods if we simply look at nature around us. In the late afternoon, after we've completed our work and as the sun is setting, it feels quiet, as if all of nature is settling down. Everyone feels comfortable, just sitting back and relaxing in the evenings as the birds are going to sleep. Observing nature, we find a settling, a heaviness, and silence in the environment. This corresponds with the predominant influence of Kapha during this evening portion of the day. If we allow it, this influence will be reflected in our bodies also, which will feel relaxed, heavy, and naturally prepared for sleep. This example gives us insight into the first pivotal behavior in the daily routine, the time of going to bed. The ideal time for bedtime is at the end of the Kapha period of evening and the beginning of the Pitta period, the junction point between the two. This is at 10 p.m. At this time, the body is most relaxed, heavy, and ready for deep rest. If we postpone our bedtime much beyond this point, beyond 11 p.m. for example, and certainly to midnight or beyond, we will completely miss the nourishing wave of Kapha which has passed through the physiology in the evening, preparing it for rejuvenating sleep. In fact, the sleep which we will get by going to bed later will be lighter in quality, more imbued with the qualities of Pitta, for example, sharpness and dynamism, and will therefore not be as rejuvenating and refreshing to the system. This means that sleep will not be as revitalizing. Having our sleep cycle out of synchrony with this basic rhythm of nature will over a period of time lead to chronic fatigue. Because I'm sure that many of you listening to this course are not in synchrony with this cycle, that is, are not going to bed at 10 p.m. or shortly thereafter, I want to spend more time on this point. This one area, if successfully dealt with, will be a tremendous source of added energy and health for you. There are 2 linchpins to putting our sleep cycle in harmony with nature's rhythms. One I've just mentioned, going to bed at the junction point between the Kapha and the Pitta periods of the evening. The other is to wake up at the end of the Vata period or at the junction point between the Vata and Kapha periods of morning. You'll see that the junction point between Vata and Kapha in the morning is at sunrise or around 6 a.m. Getting up at this time or before this time has several important benefits. Firstly, if we arise during or at the end of the Vata period, the mind and the body will be imbued with the qualities of Vata, namely lightness, quickness, alertness, enthusiasm, exhilaration. This is just the right time to start the day. It's about the time when you hear the birds twittering and becoming active outside your window, the time when all of nature is waking up. If, on the other hand, you miss this natural junction point and sleep into the Kapha period of morning, you will wake up with mind and body imbued with the qualities of Kapha, namely heaviness, dullness, and slowness. If this is your habitual sleep pattern, then over time the mind-body system will be chronically imbued with these qualities and become lethargic and sluggish. This has a dampening influence on the body's energy systems. So the first 2 important linchpins in the balanced daily routine are going to bed early and waking up early. If you are in a habitual pattern of going to bed late and waking up late, I know you may feel discouraged to hear this, but I don't think you should feel discouraged at all. In fact, it is very exciting to know that by learning to live more in harmony with nature's rhythms, you will be able to liberate huge reserves of energy that previously were being covered by a layer of inertia, that is Kapha. I'm going to give you several recommendations here for how to achieve this shift in your bedtime and awakening time so as to bring your sleep cycle more into tune with nature. The key thing to realize here is that your bedtime and awakening time depend upon each other. Obviously, in order to wake up early, it is very helpful if you have gone to bed early the night before. On the other hand, to go to bed early, it helps to have gotten up early the day before. Let's look at how you can culture a more natural early bedtime. Early bedtime depends upon having evening activities which are conducive to relaxation. Remember, I mentioned that during the evening, many bodily changes are naturally occurring which favor rest and relaxation. Hormone levels such as cortisol are decreasing, the body temperature is decreasing, and so forth. This is a time when nature intends us to ease off of dynamic activity and go into a more restful mode. As I mentioned in the lesson on digestion, supper ideally should be a relatively light meal. Also, it is helpful to have it early, by about 6 p.m. or at the latest by about 7. Digestion will therefore be mostly completed by about 10 p.m., which will allow the system to settle down more easily. Digestion requires an increase in metabolism, which tends to be opposed to sleep. That's why eating a heavy meal at supper, in addition to creating other problems, tends to disrupt sleep. After supper, enjoy light, relaxing activities, such as reading, listening to light music, spending time with the family, playing with the children, or talking to friends. Watching television is not particularly recommended, as the electronic visual stimulus of watching TV is innately exciting to the nervous system, even if the content of the show you're watching seems relaxing. If you find that you must do focused work at night, for example, students, business executives, and others may find that their work requires this, then try to ease off such work at least an hour before bedtime, ideally by 9 p.m., so that the system may become more relaxed before bed. So remember that the ideal bedtime will be at the end of the kapha period of the evening, 10 p.m. This will be the best bedtime to promote overall balance. If you find this very difficult to achieve because of past habits of late retiring, then we can stretch this to 11 p.m., which is the early part of the pitta period of evening. Beyond 11 p.m., we would consider to be a bedtime well out of synchrony with nature's rhythms. Just before bed, you may wish to drink something light, which helps to promote sleep. The best things to take are things which pacify and reduce vata dosha. This is because it is overly active vata dosha which disturbs sleep. Remember that vata is light, quick, restless, wakeful. A little warm milk with some vata pacifying herb, a couple of pinches of cardamom, and a small bit of saffron are ideal. You may also add a bit of raw sugar, and this makes a very nice bedtime drink. Another commonly available herbal spice you can use instead of cardamom is nutmeg. If you feel you have a problem with milk digestion, remember to add a pinch or two of fresh grated ginger prior to boiling the milk, as I described in the lesson on digestion. I want to bring up another point regarding your bedroom. You should try to avoid doing work, reading, watching television, and other such activities in the bedroom. These activities create a mental association in your mind between the bedroom and wakefulness. The bedroom should be associated with sleep, and in fact the whole decor should be restful and relaxing, as well as orderly, so as to create a soothing influence on the system. Reserve such wakeful activities for other parts of the house. Now let's suppose you've gotten into bed by 10 p.m. or at the latest by 11, and that you find you're unable to sleep. Should you get up out of bed, or perhaps go into another room and read until you feel sleepier? The answer is definitely no. The reason is that getting up and being active at night time has a very strong influence of increasing and aggravating vata dosha. This will throw the system further out of synchrony with nature. Instead, what you should do is continue to rest in the bed with your eyes closed and adopt what we call a not minding attitude. The reason this will be helpful is that simply resting in bed with the eyes closed, your body will get valuable needed rest, especially because this is the time when biologically nature is intending the body to rest. What if you should feel very restless while lying in bed? There is a reason for this, and it will be good to know it. As the mind and body settle down while you are resting in bed, the system wants to throw off accumulated tension and stress. As this stress is being thrown off, as it comes out, this will cause an increase of activity in the system, which you may experience as physical and mental restlessness. Although this experience may seem to be opposed to sleep, it is actually beneficial in that it indicates that the system is normalizing itself, releasing stress. The best way to deal with this natural normalization process is just to rest comfortably with eyes closed, not minding. In fact, here is a technique you can do at that time. Just easily allow the mind to be aware of the whole body. Remember in the last lesson when I was discussing the neuromuscular integration program, you'll remember that allowing awareness to be in the body creates an organizing and harmonizing influence in that part of the body. By allowing your awareness to be on the body as a whole while in bed, this will create an integrating effect throughout the whole system. Then, if some stress or tension is coming out, producing a restless sensation, this will happen much more smoothly and quickly, facilitating your falling asleep much more quickly. But remember, even if sleep seems delayed, it is much better to be resting in bed with the eyes closed, allowing your awareness to be on the body rather than getting up out of bed. Now, in order to accomplish the goal of arising early, most of you will need to use an alarm clock, at least for the period that your system is adjusting to the new schedule. After a while, many of you will find that you naturally start to wake up early, without an alarm, especially since your sleep cycle is getting more in synchrony with nature. This is the best and most natural way to get up. However, most will need to use an alarm, at least in the short run. Choose an alarm that will awaken you to a more soothing, harmonious kind of sound, such as a clock radio tuned to a classic music station or an audio tape player playing soothing music. Set the alarm for 6 a.m. or earlier, or at the latest 7 a.m. You should faithfully get up at this time, no matter how little sleep you feel you've gotten or how tired you feel. Just go through your daily activities. Sleep studies show that sleep deprivation from insomnia rarely interferes with functioning on most job-related tasks. Then you will feel sufficiently tired that evening, or after a few more days, that you will naturally want to go to bed earlier. This is one of the most important things that I am going to emphasize in this program of resetting your biological clocks to be in tune with nature's rhythms. You must faithfully get up early every day in order to accomplish this. With minor variations, this actually includes weekends, holidays, and vacations. Wide variations in your awakening time can continue to throw off your biological rhythms. The best is to try to maintain uniformity. If you feel that your bedtime and awakening times are hopelessly and habitually out of synchrony with the times I'm recommending here, and that you just cannot conceive of setting your alarm at 6 or even 7 a.m., then what I recommend is gradually moving your awakening time and correspondingly your bedtime earlier, so you progressively culture your system into this more natural rhythm. Getting your sleep in synchrony with nature's rhythm will not just give you extra rest from your sleep, but will actually promote what I call blissful sleep. Blissful sleep comes from living in harmony with nature. It is deeply refreshing and has a rejuvenating effect on the whole system. It removes chronic fatigue and normalizes the whole system, wakening up the body's energy-producing mechanisms. It is one of the most valuable pillars of our program to eliminate chronic fatigue. Now let's look at some of the other important linchpins in the balanced daily routine. I have mentioned a few of these already in the lesson on digestion. One is having your main meal at lunchtime. Not only does this help digestion, it helps to synchronize all of the other major biological rhythms. The digestive fire wants to be fed at the height of the pitta period of the day, and that is lunchtime. By satisfying this biological need, you help to set the whole system in balance. Having a light early supper also helps to fulfill this need. Now that we have looked at sleep and digestion, with respect to timing, let's look at another of the body's basic biological functions, elimination. The two main excretion or elimination functions are bowel function and urination. Most people do not have a problem eliminating urine regularly, but millions of people suffer from irregularities in bowel movements. The reason for this again is probably based on the mind-body connection and reflects the effect of stress, on the function of the intestines. According to the ideal daily routine, the best time to have a bowel movement is the first thing in the morning after waking. The reason for this is that it allows the system to throw off all the impurities from the previous day before we begin the activities of the new day. Even if you've had problems in this area for a long time, you can begin to retrain your bowel to have normal function. The main thing is just take the time to allow bowel function to happen. After getting up, drink 1 or 2 glasses of room temperature or warm water. Then go to the bathroom and just spend 5 to 10 minutes relaxed, allowing bowel function to normally happen. It will be best to avoid reading at this time, as this brings the attention upwards and outwards, whereas the natural tendency during bowel function is for attention to go inwards or downwards. If nothing seems to be happening after 10 minutes, get up and go about your business. However, if you do this faithfully each day, not minding whether or not you have a bowel movement, what will happen over time is that the natural reflex to have bowel function early in the morning will wake up. You will have recultured this normal, natural biological rhythm. You will experience that this gives you an extra boost of energy and clarity as your system's purification mechanisms become much more integrated with natural cycles. The last major linchpin in the Ayurvedic daily routine is exercise. Exercise is an important part of creating balance for everyone. But what is the purpose of exercise? To quote one of the classic Ayurvedic texts, by physical exercise, one gets lightness, capacity to work, firmness, tolerance of difficulties, diminution of physical impurities, and strengthening of digestion and metabolism. We can see from this definition that the most ancient physicians recognized that exercise improves work capacity, tolerance of stress, and strengthens digestion and metabolism. In other words, it creates energy. However, this definition of exercise is followed by a very important point, and that is that over-exercise can be as damaging as under-exercise. The quote from the Ayurvedic classics is, "Exercise should be performed in moderation." One reason why millions of people have a problem introducing regular exercise into their lifestyles is the current emphasis on vigorous and strenuous exercise. While vigorous exercise may be appropriate for certain body types, it is actually inappropriate for many people. It creates an unpleasant effect for them, which turns them off to exercise as a whole. This is unfortunate, especially since some moderate exercise, in tune with a person's body type, is one of the most valuable things we can do to promote energy. Looking back at the 3 basic body types, let's see what types of exercise are appropriate for each. For Vata predominant types, exercise should be definitely light. Vata is light and airy by nature. It will not tolerate strenuous or overly vigorous exercise. In fact, such exercise will create Vata imbalance, be energy draining, and create more fatigue. The best overall Vata exercise is walking and activities which resemble walking. These include light swimming or bicycle riding. A Vata type should try to walk 15 to 20 minutes every day, easily but continuously. As exercise tolerance increases, pace of walking can be increased so that it becomes brisk walking. The same is the case for swimming or bicycle riding. In cold winter months, when outdoor walking may not be comfortable, indoor exercise equipment such as stationary bicycle or treadmill can be helpful. In addition to walking and equivalent exercises, yoga stretching exercises such as the neuromuscular integration program, which I introduced in the last lesson, are very valuable for Vata types. By doing light exercise consistent with their body nature, Vata will actually enjoy exercise. It will create bliss in the mind as well as in the body. It will create nourishing, healing neurochemicals that will improve the body's functioning and liberate energy. Now, Pitta types have moderate exercise tolerance and so should engage in moderate forms of exercise. Again, exercises that involve continuous motion for at least 15 to 20 minutes are best. But for Pittas, the pace of exercise can be a bit more intense than for Vatas. brisk walking, moderate cycling, mild to moderate weightlifting, moderate cross-country skiing, and swimming are good. Pittas also especially enjoy competitive sports, tennis, racquetball, etc., because of their dynamic and competitive natures. These activities are fine as long as the competition doesn't get so intense that it inflames a Pitta type's aggressive nature. Also, if this type of exercise involves a lot of starting and stopping rather than continuous motion, it may not have as much physiological value as the continuous motion types of exercises. Finally, Kapha predominant types are the ones who need more vigorous exercise. Kapha types tend to accumulate heaviness, and exercise will help to lighten this up considerably. Otherwise, Kapha types could become overly inert and lazy, the typical couch potato. Sometimes it is hard for a Kapha type to get moving because of some tendency towards inertia. But if they can make a start in the direction of exercise, Kapha types will usually find that they feel so much better, they will gain momentum and soon be enjoying the more vigorous level of exercise which is appropriate to their type. Kapha type exercises include jogging, assuming you have no joint problems, especially knee problems or back problems, and also more vigorous bicycling and swimming, cross-country skiing, heavier weightlifting, and aerobic dance. Again, indoor exercise equipment can be very helpful during the winter months to keep up a Kapha's exercise program. By exercising in tune with your body type, you'll find that exercise becomes one of the most enjoyable and invigorating experiences of your daily routine. What about the best times for exercise? The ideal time is during the Kapha period of morning, which helps to lighten up Kapha and get the day off to a dynamic start. If you're practicing meditation, the best time to exercise is just after meditation, or optionally you may exercise before meditation, but then ideally you should allow the system to settle down somewhat by doing the neuromuscular and neurorespiratory integration techniques just before meditation. If you cannot exercise in the morning, you may do so at any time during the daytime hours. However, exercise after sundown is not recommended, as it tends to agitate the system at a time when the body naturally wants to be settling down before bed. There is one kind of exercise in Ayurveda which is universally recommended for all body types and which has a particularly energizing effect on the system. This exercise is called sun salutations. Traditionally, it is performed in the early morning as the sun is rising, while facing the sun. However, it may be performed at any time during the day. The sun salutation exercise consists of a cycle of 12 postures which are alternated at about 5-second intervals. There is a recommended breathing pattern which accompanies the exercise. So this exercise involves both body and breathing. Please look at your workbook for a description of the sun salutation exercise. If you are not very limber and rather stiff, it may be best to do the neuromuscular integration exercises for a few weeks before undertaking the sun salutations. The sun salutations are more vigorous than the neuromuscular integration exercises, but by varying the speed and number of repetitions of this exercise, sun salutations can be tailored to be light, moderate, or vigorous, depending on your body type. Again, if you're in the older age group or have some muscular, joint, or skeletal problem, it would be best to consult your doctor before doing the sun salutation exercise. Before ending this lesson on biological rhythms, I want to mention one other biological rhythm which can play a key role in energy and fatigue: the monthly female menstrual cycle. Ayurveda holds that menstruation is a type of physiological purification. It is a kind of purification of the blood. During the process of menstruation, much of the body's energies are directed towards this purification, towards downward movement. There is a natural tendency for the awareness to go inward during this period of downward movement of Vata. For this reason, Ayurveda recommends taking it easier during the menstrual period, especially during the first couple of days. Overexertion during this time can create imbalances in the system, especially Vata imbalances, which can be a major energy drainer for the body. Ayurvedic experts have commented that the modern custom of ignoring this natural tendency during menstruation and encouraging women to be just as active and dynamic during this time as they would be at any other time of the month is responsible for many of the modern health problems of women, including the increased incidence of chronic fatigue among women. The recommendation is to take it easy during the first few days of menstruation. So now we've taken a good look at how our behavior, especially as it relates to the rhythms of nature, affects our energy and the entire range of our experience. If we live in tune with the rhythms of nature, we'll gain great support from nature. Riding the waves of nature's cycles, we'll have the power of nature behind us in all of our activities. This will have a very positive, transforming effect on our energy and health. Now I'll summarize the recommendations for this lesson. 1. Early bedtime and arising time, lunch as the main meal, light supper, and culturing regular elimination. 2. Begin to integrate exercise into your routine on a regular basis, ideally every day or at least every other day. Continuous motion exercises done for 15 or 20 minutes are best. Choose an exercise consistent with your body type, as described in this lesson. 3. For women, try to structure your activities so you can take it a little easier during the first 2 days of your menstrual cycle. If possible, structure one of these days as a day of more complete rest. In the next lesson, we are going to look closely at the environment and our relationship to it, and how this affects our energy and vitality.
This is the end of Lesson 6. Please review all the recommendations so far before continuing with Lesson 7. Chronic fatigue continues with Lesson 5, Unlocking Your Mind's Energizing Potential, in which you will learn the key to enlivening your mind-body connection and how to reduce stress. Dr. Chopra.
So now we want to look at the role of the mind, how the mind can play a powerful role in creating chronic fatigue, and conversely, the ability of the mind to create energy and eliminate fatigue. Even though we are looking at the mind second, after we've considered the body, it may be that the mind is an even more important factor in creating fatigue than is the body. Studies on chronic fatigue, which have been published in medical journals, suggest that this is true. In the first lesson, I mentioned a recent study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, which looked at over 1,000 people suffering from chronic fatigue. In only a very small minority of these people was any physical abnormality found that suggested a physical cause for fatigue. This included physical examination and laboratory tests, including blood tests. On the other hand, 80% of people with chronic fatigue scored abnormally on tests of anxiety and/or depression. This and other studies suggest that chronic fatigue may have much more to do with the mind and the emotions than it does with the body. How can we understand this? The answer again lies in the mind-body connection. This connection is so obvious that it is amazing the extent to which modern medicine tends to overlook it. However, the latest scientific research findings are explaining the ways in which the mind exercises a tremendous influence on the body. You'll remember in the first lesson when I discussed the neurochemicals or neuropeptides whose profound role in the physiology is now being better understood. These tiny chemicals, produced every time we have a thought or an emotion, circulate throughout the body and bind to every organ system. It is especially known that they bind to the immune system cells and the digestive system. These chemicals have a very powerful effect on immune system functioning. They can either increase and enhance immune function, or they can depress it. And they also have a profound effect upon the functions of digestion and elimination. Once we appreciate this physiological picture of the mind-body connection, we will see how the mind can be a major energizer or de-energizer of the body. Fluctuations or changes in the mind, whether they be in thoughts or feelings or moods, can cause chemical changes in the brain which release powerful neurochemicals into the circulation to affect the whole physiology. These neurochemicals are like powerful drugs. Just to give an example of one of these, many of you have perhaps heard about endorphins, which were discovered about 2 decades ago. Endorphins are natural painkillers produced by the brain. In fact, the word endorphin literally means internally produced morphine. Comparing endorphins to morphine is by no means an exaggeration. You know that morphine is probably the most powerful narcotic pain-killing drug used in medicine. It is a narcotic opiate closely related to heroin. What has been found in the case of endorphins, however, is that they are 50 to 100 times more powerful than morphine. It is amazing to think that the body can produce such a potent painkiller, and yet it does so all the time, in very small amounts, or in acute pain in large amounts. This gives us a clue to a very important reality. The brain is the most powerful pharmacy that we can have access to. Endorphins are probably one of literally thousands of naturally occurring biochemicals which the brain produces in order to create health and healing. The great advantage of these natural, internally produced chemicals over drugs that you buy in a pharmacy is that our own neurochemicals are produced in just the right amount, at just the right times in response to the body's perception of pain or some other biological need. And there are no side effects to these natural biochemicals since they are part and parcel of the body's natural healing system. Just as it contains potent painkillers, the brain's natural pharmacy contains compounds to re-establish balance in all the body's major systems, including its energy systems. The key to perfect health is in learning how to use the brain's pharmacy properly. Once we gain more mastery in this area, we ourselves will be able to produce powerful, energizing compounds which will enhance our body's energy-producing systems much more effectively than any pep pill we could take from the outside, and also completely naturally without side effects. It will also mean learning how to turn off production of neurochemicals that actually dampen the body's energy-producing and healing systems. The key to the brain's neurochemical pharmacy is in the mind. Balance of mind will produce balance of the brain's chemistry, which will in turn produce optimum functioning of the body's energy systems. How to create balance of mind? The first step, and probably most important, is to reduce and eliminate stress. Stress is a term we're all familiar with. It conjures up all sorts of images and experiences we have every day. Being caught on the expressway at rush hour, having to meet time deadlines, harsh words, disappointments, and so forth. We all associate these with stress. How can we define stress? Ayurveda defines stress as the undue pressure of experience. This means that our system is subjected to some experience it is not prepared to handle in a balanced and integrated way. The pressure of this experience creates an overpowering or overwhelming influence on the system. Usually, this comes from an experience that is too intense for the system to handle easily. Or it may be from an experience that is simply inappropriate to a particular situation. We generally think of stress as being caused by negative situations. But even a good experience, if it involves undue pressure on the system, can cause stress. For example, suddenly being informed that you won $20 million in the lottery. Certainly the heart will start to race, the blood pressure will shoot up, you will break out into perspiration, and so forth. All of these are signs of a stress reaction. Looking closely at this stress reaction, we see another example of the mind-body connection. Some event comes along which is purely psychological, and yet it produces an immediate effect on the body. Medical scientists call this stress reaction the fight or flight response, a term which is probably familiar to you. Fight or flight refers to the choice a person may have to make when presented with the possibility of extreme physical danger, for example, being physically attacked. The choice is either to stand and fight or else to turn and quickly flee. What happens in such a situation is that the psychological experience of fear or anxiety gets translated into neurochemicals and other hormonal changes, which circulate throughout the body and affect many different systems. Heart rate speeds up, blood pressure goes up, blood flow is shunted to the muscles, so they may take quick action if necessary. Blood flow is shunted away from the stomach and intestines, digestion shuts down, and there may be a feeling of cramps or nausea. Perspiration breaks out, cold sweat, and even the hair can stand on end. The main point about the fight or flight response is that it obviously interferes with normal functioning of the system. We can especially see how it affects the heart and circulatory system, as well as the digestive and elimination systems. Even one experience of a full-blown fight or flight response is a huge energy drain on the body. Many experts have pointed out that small versions of the fight or flight response are elicited every day during the course of modern life. When everyday life starts to feel like a constant battle, one can be sure that miniature versions of the fight or flight response are continually being elicited in the body. If one's life experience is of deadlines and aggressive interactions during the day, or recurring battles on the home front, you can be sure that the stress reaction is becoming a continuous feature of physiological functioning. At this point, it should be clear that what stress does is changes the body's ability to function normally. Of course, the body has a tremendous ability for self-repair and healing. Given a chance, the effects of stress on the body can be repaired and reversed. I'll discuss in a few moments some of the best ways to give the mind-body system such a chance. However, lacking such opportunities, and if the exposure to stress is a continual feature of daily life, obviously this has a very draining and depleting effect on the system. The body is constantly having to mobilize energy to deal with perceived stress. The result is inevitably chronic fatigue. Chronic stress not only drains the system of energy directly, it also acts to interfere with the body's energy-producing systems, especially digestion and elimination. How often have you heard expressions like the following in relation to a stressful experience? I felt like my stomach was tied up in knots. I felt it in my gut. I had a lump in my throat. I completely lost my appetite. It makes me feel sick to my stomach. These common expressions of the experience of stress tell us that the digestive system, the stomach and intestines, is one of the major areas to bear the brunt of the stress response. So when stress becomes a way of life, it's obvious that digestion will be one of the major areas to be affected. Digestive efficiency is weakened, and therefore so is the body's main energy-producing system. There is another master system of the body which is directly affected by stress, and that is the immune system. It is now known that many of the neurochemicals which the brain produces interact directly with the cells of the immune system and affect their function. For this reason, these neurochemicals are called immunomodulators. They change the way the immune system functions. The neurochemicals which are produced as part of the stress response are immunodepressors. They depress the functioning of the immune system. Studies have shown that people under chronic stress have weaker immunity than people who are not. The effect of the mind-body connection on immunity is important for anyone who may be suffering from long-term problems with immunity, especially people with chronic fatigue syndrome, the syndrome I described in the first lesson. Another group of people in this category are those who have been diagnosed as having chronic yeast infection. There is a current theory in some health circles that certain people with chronic fatigue may be suffering from a long-term infection with yeast fungus. I personally feel that the evidence supporting this theory is not very strong and doubt that it is a significant cause of chronic fatigue. However, even if this theory is true for some people, the key to overcoming such chronic infection is strengthening the immune system. So the mind-body approaches contained in this course will be appropriate and helpful to these cases also. Now let's summarize this material on stress and fatigue in a primary energy principle. Please write this down. PEP number 15. The stress response is a major factor in producing chronic fatigue. It does so in two ways: by directly draining energy from the body and by interfering with the body's energy-producing systems, especially digestion. Before going on to the techniques for reducing stress, I want to just mention another source of chronic stress in modern life, which is much more subtle, but probably very common. This common cause of stress we call lack of fulfillment. If we took all of the obstacles and impediments out of our lives, it doesn't automatically mean that we would be without stress. Human life needs a higher dimension, a sense of inner purpose and meaningfulness in order to be without stress. A lack of inner direction, inner contentment or meaningfulness may be very subtle, especially if one fills up one's time with a whirlwind of activities. Yet such a whirlwind may only be masking a deeper problem of lack of inner fulfillment. This can be a major source of energy drain and chronic fatigue for many people. I will go into this fascinating area more deeply in the last lesson of this course. In this present lesson, we will explore the area of everyday stress, how to deal with it, and overcome its effects. The best way to reduce and eliminate stress is to provide the system with the experience which is the opposite of stress, the experience of deep relaxation and rest. For this, Ayurveda provides specific techniques of stress reduction, mental techniques which directly eliminate stress by providing the opposite experience. The first and foremost of these techniques is meditation. The specific meditation technique which I personally use and recommend is the Transcendental Meditation technique. The effects of Transcendental Meditation have been documented in over 400 scientific research studies. It is by far the most thoroughly documented technique of stress reduction and mental development. In addition to meditation, there are several other stress reduction techniques which I will recommend to you now that can be big energizers for the mind-body system. Neuromuscular integration consists of a set of yoga stretching exercises which enliven the integration between the mind, the nervous system, and the body. These are not exercises in the usual sense that we use the word exercise. We'll consider exercise as such in the next lesson. Neuromuscular integration is a much more subtle practice which is quite effortless and which works by enlivening certain vital points in the body, which Ayurveda calls marma points. These vital points are like control switches which shunt energy and biological intelligence to various parts of the body. When all of the marma points in the body are enlivened in an integrated fashion, this creates a uniform and balanced flow of energy throughout the system. It creates integration of the whole physiological system. Regular practice of these techniques greatly improves energy and vitality as well as general health. The neuromuscular integration program recommended in this course is outlined in detail in your workbook. The program consists of a sequence of yoga stretching postures, each of which stretches a different part of the body. The marma points in the part of the body being stretched are thereby enlivened, and energy shunted to the organs which are governed by those marma points. The key to successful performance of the neuromuscular integration program is that it is a mind-body program. The mind plays an important role as well as the body. The most important instruction is to hold the posture for the recommended time indicated, and while you're holding it, to allow your attention, your awareness, to easily be on the part of the body that is being stretched. This will be a natural thing that tends to happen spontaneously anyway, As you hold the posture, your mind will naturally feel the part of the body which is being stretched. You don't have to concentrate or focus to do this. Just let the flow of awareness naturally go to the area that is being stretched. Allow your awareness to flow to this area, and along with the physical stretch, you will wake up the marma point in this area. The principle here is that awareness, attention, has organizing power. This means that awareness has healing power. It helps to wake up the body's natural self-repair, self-correcting mechanisms. You'll remember we presented this very important principle in the first lesson of the course. One other important point about the neuromuscular integration program: you should never allow yourself to feel any strain or pain during its practice. If you feel that any of the postures depicted in the workbook would be difficult or painful for you to perform, you should avoid those postures completely, or perform them in a limited way, stretching only to the point where you feel comfortable, but not to the point where you feel strain or pain. If you have any question about your ability to perform any or all of the postures without discomfort, it would be best to consult your physician before proceeding with this program. If you are in the older age groups or have any acute or chronic muscle, joint, or skeletal problems, for example, chronic neck or back pain, it would be best to consult your doctor before proceeding. The whole neuromuscular integration program takes about 10 minutes to perform. You can do it once or twice a day. Many people have reported that these exercises are a major energy booster for them and improve their whole sense of well-being. Another program you will find very useful is neuro-respiratory integration. You remember in Lesson 3 when we considered how the body produces energy? The major emphasis was on digestion and metabolism. But you'll remember that respiration is also very much involved. This is because energy is produced through the combination of oxygen with food. So the quality of respiration, our breathing, is very much involved with how energetic we feel. In fact, one word for vital energy in Ayurveda is prana. Prana literally means vital breath. Ayurveda recognizes that breathing is a major energizer of the body. If breathing is balanced and relaxed, it promotes vitalizing energy throughout the system. If, on the other hand, breathing is shallow or imbalanced, the body does not get the full complement of vital energy that it needs. In Ayurveda, there is a whole science devoted to creating balance and optimum functioning of breathing. This area is called pranayama, which literally means regulating the vital breath. The neuro-respiratory integration exercises, called pranayama techniques in Ayurveda, help develop balanced respiration and good breathing habits. In your workbook, you'll find a basic balanced breathing technique from the neuro-respiratory integration program. This technique is easy to perform, takes only about 5 minutes, and it can be a major revitalizer. It is performed sitting comfortably in a chair or on the bed or the floor, usually with the eyes closed. The technique involves alternating your breathing between each nostril, the right and the left. Please read the instructions carefully. During the practice of this technique, you should breathe a little more deeply and a little more slowly than you do during normal, restful breathing. Some people may find it a bit confusing at first. If you do, simply stop the practice for a few moments, allow the breathing to occur normally again, and then easily resume the practice. You might be interested to know that the theory behind this balanced breathing technique holds that the airflow through the right and left nostrils stimulates different areas of the brain, and by alternating this airflow, neurophysiological integration is produced. We now know from modern neurophysiology that the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere of the brain have very different functions. The left hemisphere relates more to logical, linear kinds of reasoning, for example, verbal and mathematical skills, whereas the right hemisphere relates to global, holistic functions, such as spatial orientation, artistic and musical sense, and so forth. Stimulation of the inner lining of the nose and the nostrils through alternate airflow sends sequential impulses to the two different hemispheres of the brain. This helps to integrate their different functions and produce neurophysiological balance. The effect is to wake up the whole system, creating greater mental energy and clarity. There is a recommended sequence to performing these techniques I've discussed. The neuromuscular integration techniques should be performed first, followed by the neurorespiratory technique, followed by meditation. In this way, we go from a grosser level, the body, to a subtler level, the breathing, and then to the subtlest level, the mind. This creates a very holistic progression which balances the entire system. Of course, if you don't have time to do all three in succession like this, you may do any one of them in isolation. Again, meditation would be most valuable. The last stress reduction technique I'm going to bring out in this lesson is the Ayurvedic oil massage. This is a traditional part of the Ayurvedic daily routine which is done at the beginning of each day prior to the morning shower or bath as a way of purifying and balancing the whole physiology. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes to perform. If you don't have that amount of time, you can even do it 2 or 3 minutes. The most potent effect of the Ayurvedic oil massage is to balance Vata dosha throughout the system. You will remember that Vata is light, cold and dry. So you will see how the oil massage using warm oil will have a very soothing and pacifying effect on Vata. Vata dosha is the main dosha which goes out of balance from stress, and Vata imbalance is the most common producer of chronic fatigue. Therefore, beginning each day with the Ayurvedic oil massage can have a big influence on balancing Vata and eliminating fatigue. In addition, this technique has a purifying effect on the body. It increases circulation throughout the system and mobilizes and helps remove impurities from the whole body. Instructions for the Ayurvedic oil massage are found in your workbook. The oil which is recommended for most people is sesame oil, which is considered to have a uniquely balancing and vitalizing effect in Ayurveda. The oil is ideally heated briefly before it is used, then allowed to cool to skin temperature. This brief heating of the oil energizes it further and helps to thin it out, increasing its penetrability into the body. Absorption of some of the oil by the skin is particularly valuable to balance Vata dosha. I recommend that you try the Ayurvedic oil massage and see how you feel. Although it is recommended daily, I know that many of you may find this difficult, especially since it involves a new procedure with extra materials. So I recommend you start by doing this 1 or 2 mornings a week. I predict that you will feel so much better on the days when you've done the oil massage that you will naturally start to do it more and more often until you spontaneously find yourself doing it every day. So now, to summarize the information in the second part of this lesson, please write down the following primary energy principle. PEP number 16. The antidote to stress is to bring in the second element, relaxation and rest. I'd like to now summarize the main recommendations from this lesson. 1. Pursue instruction in meditation. 2. Begin to practice the other stress reduction techniques described in this lesson, the neuromuscular integration program, neurorespiratory integration technique, and Ayurvedic oil massage. Begin with any one of these techniques and incorporate it into your daily routine. Gradually integrate the other techniques into your routine comfortably over time. So now that we have considered this very important area of energy and the mind, we want to turn to the area of behavior, how our activity can help to either enliven or drain our energy resources. We'll find that activity which is in tune with nature's rhythms is energizing activity. In the next lesson, we'll discuss this very important area of biological rhythms.
This is the end of Lesson 5. Please review all of the recommendations so far before continuing with Lesson 6. Chronic fatigue continues with Lesson 6, Balancing Your Behavioral Patterns, in which you'll learn how to get in tune with nature's rhythms. Dr. Chopra. Chronic Fatigue continues with Lesson 7, Energy and Your Environment, in which you'll learn how to harness the limitless resources of nature. Dr. Chopra.
I pointed out in the first lesson that nature itself is a display of vast, unfathomable energy. We all know how contact with nature can be very revitalizing. It renews our mental energy as well as our physical energy. But while nature's influence on us is nourishing, the impact of modern civilization on nature has unfortunately not always been so nourishing. One of the most basic principles from Ayurveda is that the environment around us reflects the quality of the collective consciousness of the population. This is very much evident in modern times. For the past 150 to 200 years, there has been a prevailing philosophy in society, particularly in industry and technology, that man is separate from, perhaps even superior to nature. Man's role has been to subdue and exploit nature for his own limited material goals. The idea that man must respect and live in harmony with nature in order to create balance and health has been out of vogue in Western culture in recent centuries. The result, as we are all aware, is scientific and industrial technologies which promote imbalance, such as depletion of natural resources, environmental pollution, and the possibility of global ecological disasters. As an observer of these trends, my personal belief is that the pendulum has now begun to swing in the opposite direction. There are very encouraging signs that the collective consciousness of society is recognizing the importance of restoring balance to the natural environment as crucial to preserving individual and global health. So even though the damage done to our natural environment has been great, I feel we can be hopeful that it is still reversible and that collective consciousness in this area is rising rapidly enough to reverse the negative trends. Having said this, we also need to recognize that environmental disruptions have gotten so great in certain areas that these can affect our health and drain our energy. This can seem like an impossible situation to deal with, but let's break it down into a few simple areas. Anyone who is chronically tired and who has no clear physical ailment to explain it should at least consider each of these areas of the environment to see if a potential source of chronic energy drain may be there. The following primary energy principle summarizes the effect of our relationship with the environment. Please write it down. PEP number 18. Balance in the environment promotes balance in the individual. Environmental imbalances can lead to imbalances in the individual. I want to offer one simple word of caution before we look at this area. One can become somewhat preoccupied, even obsessive, in being concerned about the environment. There actually are people who are so worried about the effect of everything they come into contact with, water, air, foods, magnetic fields, and so forth, that they wind up living their lives in an unnatural way, contracted and withdrawn. This is not a very healthy attitude towards life or towards the environment. It can only cause us to feel more separate and alienated from nature. The cramping of spontaneity and natural joy will, I feel, lead to more imbalance in your body than would having a more open attitude. Having given you this caution, I'd like to now take a brief, realistic look at some of the major areas in the environment that could be sources of chronic fatigue. Let's look first at air quality. You will remember that Ayurveda refers to air and breathing as prana, which it also defines as vitality, vital breath, and even life itself. We also know from modern physiology that oxygen is one of the main components in the burning or metabolism of food to create vital energy. So air quality clearly has great significance. I think the most important principle from Ayurveda here is the value of getting fresh air every day. Some Ayurvedic experts have commented that it's amazing how little fresh air many Americans get in their daily routine and how draining this can be to vitality. Many people work in airtight, hermetically sealed environments in which airflow is governed by mechanical air handlers, which cannot hope to duplicate the freshness of open windows. Especially in the colder winter months, people can go for days or even weeks with only the slightest exposure to fresh air, perhaps only when stepping from the house into the car. This is actually simple to remedy. I recommend that you get at least 10 to 15 minutes of fresh air once or twice a day. This could be during your daily walk, for instance, or during other exercise. Try to create an opportunity for yourself to walk outdoors at least 10 to 15 minutes each day, even during the winter. Get off the bus a couple of stops before your destination, or park your car 10 minutes away. Try this, and I predict you'll feel the immediate benefit in your vitality and sense of well-being. What about getting fresh air into the indoor environment? During the warmer months, leave your windows open as much as possible. During the cold winter months, open your windows for at least 10 minutes twice a day. This will help to recirculate the air and avoid staleness. Of course, if you work in one of these hermetically sealed buildings, you won't be able to do this while at work. So then it's especially valuable for you to get outdoors at some time during the day for a 10-minute walk, perhaps at lunchtime. Regarding the quality of air, we know that this is a significant problem in many of our major urban communities. Hopefully, with all of the attention on this area, the quality of air in our cities will continue to improve. If you live in an area which is known to be badly polluted, and you also suffer from significant chronic fatigue, you should consider the effects that the air quality may be having on your situation. In such a case, it may be worthwhile to consider moving to a cleaner environment. Next, let's look at the water supply. Much has been written about this area, but few people are probably completely aware of what is in the water that they drink. Many people think that urban areas have the biggest problems with water quality because of industrial pollution. In fact, some rural areas have comparable or even worse problems because of the effects of toxic chemicals in pesticides that are used in farming. Fortunately, there's a growing awareness in this area, and environmental regulations are getting stronger and environmental protection more sophisticated. If you are concerned about the quality of water in your locality, you should contact your local water department or company or district office of the Environmental Protection Agency for more information. You can take two simple measures to ensure purer drinking water. One is to install a good quality water filter in your home. The best water filters are those which use reverse osmosis, called RO filters for short. The second approach is to drink and cook only with bottled water, which is now available from most grocery stores. If you do this, check the source of the water, as some bottled water, which is labeled spring water, may actually not be pure. Unfortunately, many natural springs are now contaminated with pollutants. Bottled, filtered water, especially reverse osmosis filtered, may be a better option. Let's also look at food quality. We've already discussed in the lesson on diet that freshness of food as well as intrinsic qualities of liveliness help to determine the vitalizing property of food. Part of freshness is to ensure that food is as free as possible from contaminants. Of course, all fruits and vegetables should be washed, ideally with good quality water before cooking. However, if you can get organically grown fruits and vegetables, that means produce which has been grown free of pesticides, it may be the best option. Organically produced meats are also preferred. However, I'd like to point out that animals tend to concentrate environmental pollutants in their tissues. This is especially known to occur in certain types of fish. Also, many people are concerned about the hormones given to livestock in order to increase the animal's bulk. This practice is quite widespread. So for all of these reasons, including the ones I gave previously in the diet lesson, reducing consumption of meat and fish is the best choice. Regarding dairy products, try to get the purest, highest quality products you can. Many local dairies are now using organic principles. Every day we come into contact with innumerable objects in the environment. In general, Ayurveda recommends that we emphasize to the extent possible contact with natural substances and de-emphasize contact with artificial ones. This makes sense biologically. Our bodies are structured by nature. As such, they are designed to interact with natural substances. Man-made chemicals do not have as nourishing an effect on your body and may cause imbalances. Ayurveda recommends that we keep this principle in mind in structuring our home and work environments, and also in selecting clothing. In all these areas, it's best to choose all natural fabrics, such as all cotton or all wool, rather than synthetics and polyesters and so forth. Natural fabrics allow your skin to breathe properly, to be in a more natural exchange with the environment. Synthetics do not allow this natural breathing and energy exchange to take place as easily. Linens and bedclothes would be another area where it would be wise to favor all natural fabrics. There's one final area of the environment I want to consider, which is fascinating, though a relatively new subject of study. This is the possible effect on our energy level of sources of electricity and magnetic fields which we may come into contact with during our daily life. Recent studies have suggested that chronic exposure to sources of significant magnetic energy can have a draining effect on your body and create health problems. The research in this area is far from conclusive. Again, I don't think you should become preoccupied with this area. However, if you're constantly or frequently exposed to a known source of strong magnetic field radiation, and if you suffer from chronic fatigue, you should consider that this may be contributing to your problem. Two sources of such magnetic fields which have been receiving attention recently in the health literature are electric high power lines and office or home computers. If you live close to high tension electric lines, there is probably not much you can do except to consider moving. I recommend you do some reading in this area so you can make an educated decision about the effect this may be having on your body. Concerning computers, it is now becoming increasingly accepted that video display terminals, which are used in most computers nowadays, are sources of significant magnetic radiation. If you spend a lot of time in front of such computers, try to stay at least one full arm's length in front. At this distance, the level of radiation appears to be very low and probably not significant. Interestingly, more radiation is emitted from the sides, back, and top of video display terminals than is emitted through the screen in front. So if you work in an environment that has many of these display terminals, you may want to learn more about their effects. In concluding this section on possible environmental causes of imbalance and energy drain, I want to emphasize another positive point. The human body has a tremendous capacity for self-repair and self-correction. There are innumerable examples of this. The immune system, for example, is capable of recognizing and destroying almost every conceivable type of germ or biological invader, even ones it has never previously encountered before. This remarkable degree of flexibility in self-protection is also found in the body's detoxifying systems. So if we put our attention on strengthening our body's own self-healing mechanisms through all of the procedures for creating balance which are presented in this course, we'll be making our body more invincible to such influences. Even if the environment contains pollutants, your body will be able to handle these to a large degree. At the same time, by checking the environment for any possible extreme causes of imbalance, we can help eliminate them and thereby help our body's self-repair processes. Let us now turn to another intriguing area, which has to do not so much with the environment out there, but with how we ourselves perceive and process the environment. This is the area of balance of the five senses. The five senses, hearing, touch, sight, taste, and smell, are the five gateways through which we perceive and process all environmental influences. If these senses are healthy and balanced, they will naturally filter out many or most imbalancing influences. In fact, they can be a major source of balance and energy. Ultimately, balance of the senses depends upon balance of awareness, balance of consciousness. There is an ancient Ayurvedic saying which expresses this truth. The world is as we are. Let's write this down as our next primary energy principle. PEP 19. The world is as we are. Our experience of the world depends upon the state of our awareness. There is an analogy which is used to explain this point. The day can be beautiful and sunny, but if we are wearing eyeglasses that are dark grey, everything will look dismal and grey to us. On the other hand, if we put on rose-colored glasses, as described in a popular song of a few decades ago, everything will look rosy to us. Green glasses will produce a green hue, and so forth. The way we view the world depends just as much, in fact perhaps much more, on the state of ourselves as it does on the condition of the world. If we are experiencing balance, creativity, and inner fulfillment, this is the way we will see our world. I will be discussing more about the growth of inner joy and fulfillment in the next lesson, the last lesson of the course. For now, let's look at the 5 senses and how creating balance in them can enable us to discover a whole new source of untapped energy within. The important thing to recognize about the senses is that they are really two-way streets. First of all, they provide a channel through which information can flow from outside to inside, channels of perception. We ingest and metabolize things through our 5 senses in much the same way as we do when we eat and digest food. Taking in sensory information through the senses has a tremendous effect on our brain and our nervous system, and therefore on all of the powerful neurochemicals which our brain secretes and which circulate throughout our body. We want to make sure that these sensory influences which we are ingesting are nourishing and energy-producing ones rather than draining ones. At the same time, the 5 senses are channels through which our awareness, our consciousness, flows to the outside world. This fact is often overlooked in modern physiology, but it is very much recognized in traditional health systems, especially Ayurveda. Through the 5 senses, we project our intelligence onto the outside world and thereby understand it. This projection of our inner intelligence can be a creative act which brings exhilaration and joy, or it can be a channel through which much of our inner vitality flows outwards and is dissipated. Ayurveda says that the difference between these 2 possibilities, between perception being joy-producing versus energy-draining, has to do with the extent to which we become entrapped by the object we are perceiving. If we become too identified with the object and lose our centeredness, our grounding in ourself, this is called being object referral instead of self-referral. I'm going to discuss this very important area in the next lesson. For now, I want to focus on the flow of input through the senses from the outside world to inside, ensuring that this is balanced and nourishing. We'll describe this point in the next primary energy principle. Please write it. PEP number 20. The 5 senses are gateways to the mind-body system. To the extent we can choose sensory input which is harmonious and balancing, we can help culture happiness and energy throughout our system. Let's look first at the sense of hearing. A lot has been written in recent years about noise pollution. Noise pollution means the effect of very high levels of noise and also unpleasant or discordant noise on the mind-body system. Unfortunately, many people are exposed to noise pollution throughout their daily lives, especially people living in large cities. Noise pollution is a kind of sensory hyperarousal. This means an excessive level of sensory input which tends to keep the nervous system constantly on alert, constantly aroused. It can cause a kind of chronic stress response, a low-grade fight or flight response similar to other forms of chronic stress. Biologically, our systems are probably programmed to think of loud noise as a signal of impending danger. Therefore, even if we think we have acclimated to this over time, it probably creates a subtle but chronic draining influence. This is again one of those environmental problems which may be difficult to resolve, especially if your whole living situation is centered in a high noise area. But being aware of this as a potential energy drainer, you may be able to find creative ways to muffle the effect of noise pollution and create a softer, more harmonious environment. For example, you could try relocating your work area or sleeping area to the quietest part of the office or house. Use draperies and overstuffed furniture to muffle noise. Some experts recommend the use of white noise, a background recording of soft music or natural sounds such as ocean sounds or flowing water to mask harsher sounds such as automobile traffic. Try various options and see which work best for you. When you do have control over the kinds of sounds you are exposed to, make a conscious effort to make these sounds as harmonious and uplifting as possible. Avoid discordant, harsh music. Recent studies suggest that such music has a disruptive effect on biological rhythms, and favor soothing, more tranquil music. Different combinations of sounds and musical melodies are known to create different physiological effects. As the mind-body changes throughout the day, as it comes under the influences of Kapha, Pitta and Vata, different sound values will help to maintain integration of biological rhythms and create overall balance. The sense of sound can be used as a powerful mechanism through which balance may be created in your whole system. There are certain key points during the day when the value of sound can have a particularly strong effect. One of these, as I mentioned in the previous lesson, is at bedtime. By listening to musical sounds which relate to that key time in the daily cycle, we can help culture a natural state of serenity and restfulness, which will be ideal just before bed. Let's turn now to the sense of touch. You may remember in the last lesson, when I was discussing the neuromuscular integration exercises, I mentioned the vital points which exist in your body called marma points. Remember that these are considered to be like control switches through which energy is shunted to different parts of your body. Many of these marma points are located on the surface of your skin. There is an aspect of Ayurveda called marma therapy, which deals with balancing these vital points. At home, you can do a type of marma therapy which is very effective and which in fact you have already learned. This is the Ayurvedic oil massage which I described in lesson 5. I mentioned that this massage balances Vata throughout our system. In Ayurvedic terms, it does this by enlivening all of the marma points on your skin surface. Several areas contain some very important marma points, so I would like to recommend that you spend a little more time massaging these areas. These include your scalp, ears, and soles of the feet. If you need to omit your scalp because of not enough time to shampoo afterwards, this is all right, but try to do your scalp at least once or twice a week. Also, there are 3 major marma points which correspond to the main seats of Vata, Pitta and Kapha, and which are worth giving a few more moments of attention. These are in the center of your forehead, in the center and towards the lower part of your breastbone, just over your heart, and over your lower abdomen about 2 inches below your navel. Use gentle pressure, simply making a large circular motion over each of these areas. Traditionally, a clockwise motion is recommended. Giving attention to the marma points in your skin through the daily oil massage will help wake up integrated energy flow throughout your body. The third sense is the sense of sight. This is the sense which is probably most subject to sensory input throughout the day. It is also the sense which is probably the most subject to sensory overload. A tired feeling around your eyes, headaches, eye twitches, and so forth are signs of this overloading, which can be a major energy drain. Some recommendations are obvious. Try to avoid eye strain caused by reading without adequate light or reading print which is too small. Of course, regular eye exams and correction if necessary are part of good health care. At the same time, we should be alert to possible sensory overload through our eyes in the same way as I discussed with the sense of hearing. For most people, this occurs more in the entertainment area than in any other. Much of our recreational entertainment centers around the sense of vision, especially movies and television. Much of this entertainment is probably a kind of sensory overload, perhaps one to which your system has become somewhat acclimated. But if it is chronic, it can be a big energy drainer. To see if this is true for you, try taking a few nights off from watching television, then note how you feel during the following days. Many people feel an enhanced inner serenity and centeredness, greater balance and strength, which gives them more happiness and energy during the day. Of course, occasional television or a movie can certainly be very enjoyable, but if this is part of your daily diet, you may want to consider it as a possible chronic energy blocker. If you feel you simply cannot do without it, then at least try to avoid watching TV in the hour or so before going to bed, and be alert to the kinds of programs and movies you're watching. Much of television and cinema these days is offensive to the senses, either on a subtle or gross level. Try to be discriminating in what you expose your senses to. Choose material which is uplifting and nourishing. This will give you a boost, not only of energy, but of happiness. We've spoken about taste, the fourth sense in the lesson about diet. Remember that the most important point here is to experience all 6 tastes every day, ideally at every meal. This not only improves digestion and helps balance your system, it adds zest to your life. In general, the following common spices are recommended for use in cooking or at the table: black pepper, ginger, rock salt if available, cumin, turmeric, cardamom, cinnamon, cloves, and mustard seeds. These spices are also considered to have a sattvic, energizing quality. Hot spices such as cayenne pepper and chilies should be used sparingly if at all, as they may be too intense for some, especially pitta types. The last sensory channel is the sense of smell. Ayurveda considers the sense of smell to have a particularly potent effect on the mind-body system. We know from our own experience the power of smell to evoke memories and emotions. Walking into a room and experiencing a certain fragrance has the power to call up vivid emotional memories of relationships long past. In modern physiology, it's known that the nerves which bring information about smell from the nose to the brain travel directly to the deepest regions of the brain, which deal with emotion and the regulation of many of our body's most basic vital functions. The use of smell or aroma to create physiological balance is an ancient part of classic Ayurveda. Particular smells will have influences on particular doshas. In general, the pattern is similar to that with the tastes. For example, sweet or sour smells will tend to pacify or balance vata dosha. Spicy fragrances tend to balance kapha dosha. Sweet or minty fragrances tend to balance pitta dosha. The best way to use aromatherapy is by using aromatic oils at bedtime to create a fragrance which lasts throughout the night. At bedtime, the usual recommendation is to use vata aroma, since pacifying or balancing vata creates the serenity and restfulness most conducive to sleep. During the daytime, you may also find aromatherapy particularly balancing and enlivening. You may use it at work or at home. During the daytime, choose the aroma similarly to how you would choose your body type diet for that day, based on a combination of the leading doshas in your body type and the season of the year. You can refer back to the lesson on diet for these instructions. Although the specific aroma oils, vata, pitta, and kapha, are a selection of specially blended aromas to balance those doshas, you can in fact choose floral and fruity essences to balance vata, cooling and minty essences to balance pitta, and spicy essences to balance kapha. This is described further in your workbook as well. Specific aroma oils for vata, pitta, and kapha balancing are available as described in your workbook. By avoiding exposing the senses to input which is likely to be hyper-arousing, unpleasant or imbalancing, and by using sensory inputs which create balance and integration, you can culture these 5 channels of perception to create energy and bliss. Now let's summarize the recommendations for this lesson. 1. Examine your environment, especially at home and at work, to identify possible areas whose influence may be imbalancing. Try to reduce or eliminate the kinds of influences described in this lesson. 2. Soothe and balance the senses with music therapy, aromatherapy, marma therapy, which is daily oil massage also, and the 6 tastes. Take steps to minimize sensory overload and imbalance. 3. Continue to do your energy tracking exercises as previously. Now in the next lesson, we'll discuss the need for personal growth to fulfillment as the ultimate human need, and see why progress in this goal is very important for enjoying the energy and vitality which we all want.
This is the end of Lesson 7. Please review all the recommendations so far before continuing with Lesson 8. The course on chronic fatigue concludes with Lesson 8, The Power of Personal Growth, in which you'll learn that the goal of all life is to live in joy, vitality, and wholeness. Dr. Chopra.
One of the most intriguing principles of traditional Ayurveda is expressed in the following primary energy principle. PEP number 21. Progress is the basis of survival. Please write this down. When we think about it, this principle seems to be the opposite of what most people think about life. All attention generally goes on gathering the means of survival. But in fact, in this energy principle, Ayurveda emphasizes that for the human being, progress and growth are an essential part of its nature. Without the sense of constantly progressing, constantly growing, it is not actually possible to survive in any meaningful way. If there weren't progress, life would be static, it would be dull, it would be inert, it would be unrhythmic, it would be mummified. Devoting oneself to the means of survival, whatever treadmill or rat race that means putting oneself on, is not sufficient to maintain life in the true sense. What results instead is a kind of stagnation. It gives rise to chronic fatigue. On the other hand, to be constantly progressing and growing is exhilarating. It creates a natural sense of meaningfulness, which sustains one throughout all the ups and downs of life. From what we know of the mind-body connection, we can easily see that such a life in progress creates numerous neurochemicals which energize and vitalize the system. Progress, personal growth, is the ultimate key to vital energy. What do we mean by personal progress and growth? In the ultimate sense, progress means unfolding our full potential. To not develop our full potential is to be not quite whole. Deep within every person is the impulse to be the very best he possibly can. Deep down, everyone suspects that he or she has the potential to be great, and that realizing this greatness, in whatever personal way that might be, is the real goal of his or her life. When we look at children, we see this impulse to be great most clearly. Children have no doubts about their ability to achieve what they want and to grow, to be everything that they can. They exude a joy and spontaneity in everything, not to mention unbounded energy. The impulse to wholeness is the natural human birthright. Within each of us is the possibility of wholeness, and the deep desire to achieve it. Wholeness means being completely integrated, without any sense of being separate, fragmented, or limited. It means experiencing natural joy, which we call pure joy or bliss. To experience that in everything, it means to be in the flow, to be in tune with nature's rhythms, so that we feel our activity to be integrated with nature, supported by nature. Modern psychologists have described the state of wholeness which Ayurveda traditionally holds as the goal of human development as self-actualization. Originally described by the famous psychologist Abraham Maslow, self-actualization is a state of life characterized by creativity, inner freedom and fulfillment, energy and spontaneity. Maslow felt that this state is the natural goal of evolution for every person. Of course, wholeness is something which many people have experienced spontaneously, at least for moments or certain periods in their lives. The Indian poet Tagore, in one of his most memorable poems, expresses it so beautifully when he says, "The same stream of life that runs through my veins runs through the world and dances in rhythmic measure. It is the same life that shoots in joy through the dust of the earth and breaks into tumultuous waves of leaves and flowers. It is the same life that is rocked in the ocean cradle of birth and death, in ebb and in flow." And then he says, "I feel my limbs are made glorious by the touch of this world of life, and my pride is from the life throb of ages dancing in my blood this moment." And that is what wholeness means. It means to experience the life throb of ages, the life throb of existence itself, dancing and pulsating and throbbing in your physiology in every moment of your life. This beautiful experience very nicely points out some of the main features of the state of wholeness. First of all, it is naturally accompanied by joy. Secondly, there is the sense of everything flowing effortlessly, of being intimately connected to everything, to people, to the environment, to nature. In Ayurvedic terms, this is called support of nature. The sense of connectedness is so rich that one may even seem to know beforehand events that are going to happen in the future. This means that the mental and perceptual and intuitive faculties are all very refined. The whole mind-body system is experienced as functioning in a completely balanced and holistic way. And there is the flow of blissful energy throughout the whole system, energy which seems to be unending. In fact, one feels one is connected to the source of energy itself. Ayurveda says that this state of wholeness is the natural birthright of every person. And modern science is telling us that we are indeed intimately connected to all of nature and to the source of energy itself. The great advantage of Ayurveda is that it provides practical techniques and approaches for balancing the mind-body systems and thereby re-establishing this link to the source of creative energy in nature in practical everyday life. I think it will now be useful for you to look at this vision of the goal of human growth and development, wholeness, in terms of your own life. Over the years, many of us have developed attitudes and self-concepts which limit the view of our own potential. As I mentioned before, children naturally allow the energy and joy of nature to flow through them, and they feel that their potential is unbounded. But as we grow into adulthood, perhaps too many disappointments come up along the way, and this gives rise to doubt about the possibility of fulfilling our goals. Ayurveda says that these three experiences, disappointment, rejection, and doubt, are the greatest creators of stress in the system. The effect of these experiences is to crimp the system and with time to disallow the full expression of our true inner potential. We develop attitudes which are self-limiting rather than self-expanding. Perhaps these attitudes develop as a way of protecting the heart from further disappointment. But the effect of such self-limitation is nonetheless devastating for growth. Such ideas as, I guess I'll never be completely happy, but it's okay. Who's really happy anyway? Or I guess I'll never achieve my goals. They were probably too unrealistic anyway. Or I'm not the kind of person who can really be successful in creative things or intellectual endeavors or sports or intimate social relationships. I think there is hardly any phrase more self-limiting than I'm not the kind of person who, and on and on and on. The thing about these chronic limiting attitudes is that they become reflected in our neurochemistry. The mind-body connection is always at work, so after a while, such negative attitudes become translated into some kind of physical state, such as chronic fatigue. After all, fatigue is really just a kind of inertia, a kind of physical disappointment with life. The key to getting rid of these time-worn, crimping attitudes is to transcend them. Transcending is the only way. It is really very difficult to fight attitudes by just trying to introduce new, more positive attitudes, which is usually called the power of positive thinking. The real solution is to go beyond the attitudes, beyond the old habits, to a deeper level of organizing power, a deeper level of coherence, to transcend to the source of thought, to the unified field of pure joy and pure potentiality. The classic texts of Ayurveda describe clearly what happens when one alternates the experience of transcending with daily activity. What happens is, after each experience of transcending, when we come out from the meditation period, some of the unboundedness and inner potential experienced during transcending stays with us in daily activity. In neurophysiological terms, what happens is that some of the brainwave integration that occurred during the practice of meditation stays with us during our activity. This opens up the possibility of new brain circuits, new areas of the brain becoming available to us in our thought, perception, and action. Spontaneously, we become more flexible, more creative in dealing with situations. And that growing sense of freedom is accompanied by growing happiness and bliss. The experience is completely natural. The end result of this process of alternating transcending with activity is that over time it develops a state of liberation, wholeness, complete freedom in life. When we are caught in the grip of old habits, of self-limiting attitudes, we're kind of like a machine which has great potential, but in which many of the important parts have become rusted and unable to move properly. The machine can only perform a very limited amount of the work it was intended to do. It can only express a small part of its potential. The experience of transcending is like pouring oil over all the rusted joints of the machine. After each experience, they begin to loosen up more and more. Finally, there is a frictionless flow of energy throughout the machine, and it is once again able to perform normally, to express the true purpose for which it was built. In Ayurveda, transcending is also called self-realization, because the experience of the source of thought is also the experience of one's inner self. Many people describe this experience as like coming back home, or experiencing who I really am. It is the experience of the pure self within, without all of the limitations of relative life superimposed upon it. This experience of one's own inner potential in and of itself on a regular basis is the most important thing you can do to re-establish the connection between your inner individual self and the unbounded energy and creativity of nature. As wholeness develops, we begin to function more and more from within ourselves, and our self-concept becomes less and less dependent on the opinions of others. In Ayurveda, this is called becoming self-referral instead of object referral. To be object referral means to define oneself in terms of others, always thinking about what others may be thinking of us. We sacrifice ourselves for the sake of our self-image. Everything we do must be calculated out. What is he thinking? What are they thinking? This behavior based on calculation is very energy draining. All of our energy is going outwards toward the object of perception. In Ayurveda, this is called pragyaparad, the mistake of the intellect. The mind makes the mistake of thinking that its true nature depends upon things outside itself. By contrast, being self-referral means that one locates one's true identity and meaningfulness within oneself. As I mentioned, the key to this is transcending the limitations of one's own thoughts and attitudes and experiencing one's unbounded inner self. What results naturally from this is self-referral style of functioning. And this means that our actions, rather than being deliberately calculated on a mental level, become spontaneously right. They are spontaneously right because coming from the deeper levels of the self, they are closer to the source, to the unified field of nature, and therefore more in harmony with nature. Our actions are supported by nature, as if riding on the waves of nature. At the silent level of the mind, the silent level of our nature is a computing system which is far more reliable and far more accurate than mental calculations for determining the rightness of our actions. Gaining access to nature's computing system within, we can afford to be spontaneous, and this liberates huge amounts of energy and creativity. The system becomes suffused with the spontaneity of nature. Self-referral awareness is present moment, life-giving awareness. To be more established in the self means to be living in the present time. Life is spontaneously computed in the present rather than by ruminating on the past or worrying about the future. By contrast, object referral awareness is fear-based awareness. Because the object of attention is always changing, and who can control the opinions of others, not to mention the flow of external events, if one's whole security is based on this, one becomes like a football of fate, always in danger of being kicked this way or that. This is inevitably a fear-based style of functioning, and fear-based is energy dissipating. To be living in the present means to be really living in the body. The awareness being grounded in oneself. That awareness has a nourishing effect on the whole physiology. One's experience of one's body becomes entirely renewed, integrated, youthful. The body's vital potential is expressed. Now let's express this knowledge about wholeness as our next primary energy principle. Please write this down. PEP number 22. Wholeness of life is the goal of individual human growth and evolution. Wholeness is 1. Self-referral rather than object referral. 2. Centered in present moment awareness. 3. Characterized by inner freedom and fulfillment, creativity, spontaneity, and energy. And 4. Characterized by support of nature. Now in Ayurveda, there is an ancient and important concept which relates to this area of individual human evolution, the concept of dharma. Dharma may be translated as our natural path, natural action, or natural duty. Everyone has a path of action which is most right and nourishing for him or her, a path which will create greatest happiness and speediest evolution. There are two aspects to dharma. One is universal, the other individual. Everyone has a universal dharma to achieve wholeness of life. As I said earlier, this is built into the human mind-body system. It is inscribed in our DNA, inscribed in our genes. Each generation inherits this inner impulse to grow from the previous generation. We all possess this universal drive to achieve our full potential, both mental and physical. In physical terms, this means to achieve perfect health. In mental terms, it means to achieve that state of stability, creativity and bliss, which we've called self-actualization or self-realization. Traditionally, this is called enlightenment. Along with this universal dharma, everyone also has an individual dharma. This is the individual course of action which is most appropriate for him or her and which will help to bring him or her more quickly to the goal of wholeness of life. For some people, it is natural and evolutionary to work with their hands, for others with their minds, for others with their heart, with people. For one person, being an airline pilot provides just the right opportunity for growth. For another, a homemaker. The key point is that in every case, if the action is dharmic, it will feel right, it will feel natural, and it will produce happiness. Individual dharma may also change with different phases of one's life. In earlier life, during student years, it is dharmic for most people to be single, whereas in later years, the dharma for most is family life. Occupational interests and even lifestyle orientations may change at different times of life, as one completes one phase of dharma and enters another. The important point about dharma is to be alert to the fact that action is meant to be a vehicle for the unfolding of happiness and wholeness. Remember that if something is right and natural, if it is in the course of evolution, then we will experience this in the mind-body system as a sense of comfort, of satisfaction, of happiness, of bliss as we perform that action. If action is off the path of evolution, impeding evolution, out of dharma, we will experience this as discomfort in the mind-body system. Chronic fatigue is certainly one aspect of such discomfort and may well be a sign that we need to pay attention to the area of dharma. Finding dharma means increasing creativity and decreasing fear. How to go about finding one's dharma? First of all, it's very important to recognize that universal dharma and individual dharma nourish and support each other. They are mutually reinforcing. Therefore, if one is confused about what one's individual dharma may be, one should put attention on developing one's universal dharma, developing self-referral and wholeness. In addition to meditation, all of the procedures and techniques which have been brought out in this course will help to establish balance in mind and body. This will put you more in touch with your own inner resources of creativity and intelligence. As a result, you will be finding that your perspective on your life is going to become broader and broader. With this broader perspective and enhanced creativity, you will naturally start to enjoy what you're doing more. You will find ways to discover the most evolutionary, creative aspects of your situation, and you will be able to enhance and emphasize these. The natural result is that this will bring you to a higher level of evolution. You will find more enjoyment in your work, in your relationships, and so on. Or in the process of growth, you may even find that many things change, perhaps even your line of work or certain relationships. But the change will be natural, based on the broader perspective and greater creativity which you are able to bring to the situation. Your action will be more and more in tune with your inner nature and your individual dharma. One area that you may well find changing is the amount of attention you give to recreation. Along with life's work and duty, recreation is everyone's dharma. In fact, this universe is really a recreational universe. Just look around you to see that this is true. Birds burst into song in the morning. Dolphins cavort as they leap through the waves. Everywhere is the display of joy in nature. Recreation is an intrinsic aspect of wholeness. Allowing enough time for recreation is an important part of growing towards wholeness. The best balance of life is to spend 1/3 of one's life in work, 1/3 in sleep, and 1/3 in recreation. Many of the techniques which I've recommended in this course I would include in the category of recreation, including meditation and exercise and the neuromuscular and neurorespiratory integration techniques. But you should also allow enough time for other types of recreation. Just playing with children can be one of the most rejuvenating and revitalizing things you can do. Playing games and sports, being with friends, enjoying a show, good music, going out to a restaurant, walking in nature, enjoying a holiday, these are all aspects of recreation. And recreation literally means recreation, to rejuvenate and revitalize, to renew the body's resources and vital energy. As part of the balanced life, Ayurveda definitely recommends taking at least one full day a week off from work. This day should be devoted completely to rest and renewal. The time-honored tradition of a weekly day of rest is greatly emphasized in all the spiritual traditions of the world, in all the ancient cultures. Our mind-body system needs one full day each week, free from the responsibilities of everyday life, in order to renew and rejuvenate itself. Our next and final primary energy principle for this lesson will summarize the main points about dharma. Please write it down. PEP number 23. Dharma. And dharma is spelled D-H-A-R-M-A. Dharma means one's natural path of action, which is most right, evolutionary, and nourishing. Dharma has two aspects. A, universal, the impulse to grow to achieve wholeness of life. And B, individual, the specific activities which are most appropriate and evolutionary for the individual. In this discussion of fulfillment and wholeness, the last area I want to touch upon is a beautiful area which Ayurveda calls behavioral rasayana. Ayurveda recognizes that certain behaviors are natural nourishers. They have an effect of building up the system and replenishing energy. Through the mind-body connection, it's clear to us how this works. Behavior which is positive and uplifting creates neurochemical changes which have a positive and uplifting effect on our own system. In other words, when we project a behavior onto another person, we ourselves experience the effects of that behavior. A positive behavior results in a very positive benefit for us. A negative behavior brings a negative effect for us. In Ayurveda, this may traditionally be thought of as the law of karma, or in other terms, as you sow, so shall you reap. But there is a real neurophysiological basis for this. In a very real sense, the effects of our actions are created in our own physiology, and the impact of that for us may be as great or greater than that of the person that we act upon. The traditional behavioral rasayanas are those actions which express respect, service, compassion, tolerance, and love. Respecting elders or teachers, supporting a person in need, gaining knowledge, spending time with learned or wiser people. These are some of the traditional behavioral rasayanas. And just as importantly, avoiding behaviors which produce negative effects, violence, both physical and mental, speaking harshly, hurting the feelings of others. Many of the traditional behavioral rasayanas are summarized in a chart in your workbook. The hallmark of behavioral rasayana can be summed up in one expression: favor the positive in every situation and do not entertain negativity. This is actually quite a practical technique, which I am going to recommend that you begin to apply in daily life. The first beneficiary of this practice will be you. The time to apply this technique is when you realize that you are feeling some discomfort on the level of your mind or body, the quantum mechanical body, and you feel that something you have said or done to another person, or even an attitude you're having, may be contributing to this. What you should do is see if you can find something positive in the situation to shift your attention to. Once you begin to culture this behavior, you'll find that you can almost always find something positive in a person or situation that you can put your attention on. Doing this serves two functions. It saves your own psychology from the negativity of the situation, but it also helps to actually turn the situation to a positive one. Remember that putting your attention on something helps that thing to grow. So, for example, say that you're interacting with a certain person and the interaction is making you feel quite negative. See if you can be the first one to say something positive or uplifting in that situation. You can do this by simply finding some little positive aspect in the situation and focusing your attention on that. You will be amazed how quickly most negative situations can be turned around and how wonderful, even exhilarated you will feel as a result. The other half of the perspective is to not entertain negativity. Here I think the word entertain is most important. Obviously, we cannot completely avoid negativity in life. But the point here is that we do not necessarily have to entertain it. When we become aware that we are feeling some negative thought, attitude, or mood, we don't necessarily have to continue to dwell on it and accentuate it. Just like a guest who arrives uninvited, we don't have to entertain that guest. If we simply have an indifferent or ignoring attitude towards the uninvited guest, he or she will leave on his own. The same is true for our attitude towards negativity. The best attitude is indifference and shifting the awareness to the positive. Trying to push out negative thoughts or feelings will only tend to make them stronger and will also drain us of energy. It's unnatural. But adopting a neutral or indifferent attitude towards negativity, while at the same time shifting the attention to something positive, is a very natural shift of awareness. The mind naturally prefers to dwell on something positive than on the negative. This shift will give us more energy and vitality. By culturing this habit of favoring positivity and not entertaining negativity, you will be amazed at how transforming this can be for your life and how much positive energy you will enjoy as a result. If you find that culturing such a shift in your awareness seems difficult, you should not strain. Rather, be aware of the negativity and wait for an opportunity to easily make a shift to the positive. With time, this will become easier and easier for you. Again, meditation will be a very valuable help for you in culturing the habit of putting your attention on the positive in a natural and effortless way. Now, I would like to summarize for you the main recommendations from this lesson. 1. Learning more about meditation in the context of developing self-actualization and wholeness. 2. There are 2 exercises in your workbook to help orient you more in the direction of growth and wholeness. The first involves changing self-limiting attitudes to growth attitudes. The second will help you to clarify your individual dharma. Please do both of these exercises as described in your workbook. 3. There is also an exercise in your workbook to help you in giving enough time for recreation. Please do this exercise also. 4. Read over the chart of behavioral rasayanas and become familiar with this valuable information. Begin to apply the technique described in this lesson, favoring the positive in every situation and not entertaining negativity. And 5. Continue to track your energy levels using the energy tracking chart as you continue to introduce all of the principles and approaches from this course into your life. The principles of fulfillment and wholeness which I have been discussing in this lesson are so important and so intimate to life that I am going to recommend that you periodically listen to this tape again to help bring these principles back into your conscious awareness. If you have time, it would be good to listen even once a week at the start, perhaps once a month thereafter. Just periodically remind yourself of the possibility of wholeness, that in fact wholeness is the natural goal of life to which we are all evolving. This will have a positive and nourishing effect for you, and it will inspire you to continue to put into practice the principles and techniques which we've discussed in this course, all of which are designed to help you achieve that state of balance which will hasten your progress on the path to fulfillment, to come out of self-limited and fear-based attitudes and behaviors to the pure joy and fulfillment of unbounded self-referral awareness. Wholeness is to play in the waves of the unbounded energy of nature, to permanently transcend fatigue, and in doing so, to achieve the ultimate goal of our personal evolution as human beings.
This is the end of Lesson 8 and the end of this course. Please review the recommendations made in this lesson and throughout the course. Start to gradually incorporate them into your daily routine, a few at a time, and start enjoying greater energy and vitality.